Hello, everyone. This is Sirrsmovies, the official podcast of Sirrwaka.com. I'm your host, Sterling Woods. Today, I am joined by
Evan Todd-McCoy
and Sam Miller.
All right. Today, we are doing our Oscars recap. We're going to discuss our winners and losers, our favorites of the night. And, okay, I was hoping one of you guys would cut me off, but neither one of you did, so I'm just messing around, listeners.
I was just white knuckling it while you were saying that.
I had a moment there.
Wait a minute.
Did I research the wrong topic?
I was Sterling already catfished me into writing all the Oscars now.
Indeed. But neither one of us was particularly interested in what was going on with the Oscars. We didn't care. So we figured this week we were just going to do a top 5 most underrated and top 5 most overrated episode this week. So that's what we will get into. You can find more episodes on Spotify, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, pretty much any other podcast app. If you'd like to donate to the show, you can help offset the cost of seeing new movie each week. You can do so on sirrwaka.com/Sirrsmovies, SIRRS. If you'd like to contact us, send an email to sirrsmovies@gmail.com or join the Sirrsmovies Facebook group. Speaking of, so we had a bit of a contest last week. We were trying to get some listener participation, and we didn't. Not a single person.
Aww.
It hurt my feelings. We had about 60 listeners or something like that, and nobody wrote in. So I'm going to extend it another week.
Sterling, you got to get with the times.
Listener,
everybody's doing streaming and digital copies now.
Yeah, let's say. Yeah, so you listener, whoever it is, either you're listening to last week's episode late or you listened to last week's episode and you thought, man, I don't want to write in. I'm not going to win. What are the chances? Blah, blah, blah. If you would have won. You could have wrote in saying Spiderman is the best movie in the world, and I only liked it because Sterling hated it, and you would have won a copy. So, lost on you. But yeah, so we're extending it till next week. So if you want to write in, do so. SIRRSmovies@gmail.com, Sirrsmovies. You're going to write in, say, what was your favorite animated movie and why for your chance to win. And a little bit of a correction on last week. I kept saying DVD. I don't know why. I'm just so used to looking at the box and saying it's DVD, but it's Black Panther Blu-ray. Digital copy included, Blu-ray. So if you got the pretty Blu-ray, you can watch Black Panther in all its glory. So free copy of Black Panther Blu-ray mailed to you, to the winner of the competition.
I can't believe you would mislead our listeners like that, Sterling. I mean,
I can.
Telling them they have a DVD. What if they got the DVD and then realized it was Blu-ray and they don't have a Blu-ray player? It would have been a waste of time.
Just tell them it's vintage.
Well, it's got a digital download copy as well. So if you don't have a Blu-ray player, you can download it.
See, there you go. Best of both worlds. You physical media, anti-physical media cord cutters. Now you got your digital download too. You can put it in your, your flash USB 3.0 device forever.
Yeah. We're gonna move on from that. All right. But yeah. So we are doing, as I said, our top 5. We're going to start with our most, let's start with our underrated.
No, overrated first.
Yeah, overrated. Okay. We're going to start with our top 5 most overrated movies and then move on to our top 5 most underrated. So
that was easier
without, yeah, I mean, for me, it was hard getting this list cut down to 5, but
no, it was easy to convince you to switch around the.
Oh yeah, it did. Yeah, because I kind of wanted to do underrated as well, just because my number one. But anyway, yeah. So since you were doing so much talking, we're gonna go ahead and start off with you, Evan. I ranked mine 5 to 1. I don't know if you did as well, but let's go ahead and get started. What is your number 5/5? Most under. Which one are we doing?
Overrated.
I'm tired.
Let's do overrated first.
What is your number 5 most overrated movie?
Okay, so mine aren't really in a particular order, but I'll start with the one that came out most recently. I talked about it a little bit in our bottom 10, top 10 episode, or bottom 5, top 10 episode. It was a while back. You can check it out, though. And that's A Quiet Place. So it kind of lit the world on fire a little bit when it came out. It was a horror movie, came out of nowhere, apparently, and it was super duper good, everybody thought. But I just thought it was a slightly more expensive Bird Box, kind of, and I mean, everybody saw Bird Box after, but they're like the same thing. You were right about that, Sterling. And it's kind of got the same problems. A Quiet Place is the movie where every dumb thing that can happen does happen. A movie that betrays its premise halfway through. And nothing about it is all that convincing, and a lot of parts of it, I think, are performative. It's trying really hard to pander to a certain slice of the population, you might say, and I just felt a little like I felt like it was a cynical move for Hollywood actors to sort of pretend to be like corn farming. There's just something weird about it. Like an actor can play anything, right? But there's something about just the whole presentation of it that felt very smarmy to me. And I think it's the most overrated movie of last year, and probably the most overrated horror movie I can remember. Even more overrated than Hereditary. I think a lot of people pick on Hereditary, and it deserves a lot of that. But to me, A Quiet Place, it made way more money. It had a bigger pop culture impact, and it's just terrible.
Yeah, agreed. Yes, I didn't. It didn't make my list, but that's what I thought immediately when seeing it. It's just, it suffered from the Murphy's Law syndrome. Just every little thing that could happen to make the suspense ramp up happened, and I mean, it had some really good scenes. It had really good moments, like the beginning moment with the kid. That was awesome. I'm not knocking it for being a good movie. It certainly was, but I think it was a bit overrated just because it was John Krasinski and because it was solid. I think it was just people said that they liked it a little bit more than it deserved, in my opinion. But
did you see that one, Sam?
I loved it. I thought it was great.
Oh,
I was like sat here like I had like an exclamation in my head when you said A Quiet Place of like, how dare he? And then realized I didn't say that out loud, and then had to sit here in silence and wait for words to come to me to put into words how much I think you're wrong. But
give it a try.
I just loved it. I loved the whole concept of it. And yeah, everything did go wrong, but in that kind of world, like, it's probably really easy for things to go wrong.
Okay, let me ask you a question though about
yeah.
that. Sorry to interrupt, but do you believe that family could survive, considering what we see in the second half of that movie of their ability to survive? Do you believe that they could survive for 3+ years or for whatever amount of years it was? I think it was like the first time you see them, it's only a few years in, and then there's a time jump. But do you believe that they could survive for that long? Because I don't. That's all I mean. Like bad things happening, of course, in this type of movie that's going to happen.
Yeah.
But did you ever feel like it was maybe a little over the top?
No.
Like none of their plans worked, not a single one. And I'm like, how did they even survive like a day, let alone several years?
Yeah, I know. I get that it's kind of like a bullshit concept at that point, and it's kind of a little bit unbelievable that someone could live for so long. In that, they're pushing the boundaries a little bit with what's believable in this kind of world, but yeah, I think it's entirely believable that a smart family could last for that long. Obviously, their downfall was having another kid,
not being a smart family.
Yeah, and
I'm with you on the having another kid thing. Me and Sterling talked about this a little bit, about what we thought having that kid meant, and he had an interesting take. That kind of made me rethink a little bit, but yeah, okay. Like I'm in the minority. I think me and Sterling are both in the minority about this movie.
Yeah,
I could go on and on about it.
Yeah, I can get where you're coming from in that it is a little bit unbelievable, but I think production-wise and concept-wise, I think it's something completely new that we haven't seen in the genre before. So that's why I like it so much. But moving on to the next one, because we don't have much time to overstate things, I'm probably going to be a bit contentious with this one, and Sterling's going to hate it because I am cheating a little bit with this one, but I'm going to say the Harry Potter series.
The whole series, huh?
Yeah, the whole series of Harry Potter films, because I hate them. I absolutely hate them. I love the Harry Potter books, and I grew up reading them, but the films I absolutely cannot stand, and I cannot understand the pop culture that surrounds them either. So yeah, that's it's just the acting is awful. I hate how much I just hate how much was going on with them, and I've watched like the first 3 of them, and then I stopped watching them, and then I've watched maybe one of the later ones, but I thought it was just because they were child actors that I hated it at first, because they were so like cardboard, like clearly reading from a script. But no, it doesn't get any better with age. They're just awful films.
Okay, that's a hot take, but
No
honestly, I
comment.
really don't disagree. I mean, I really don't disagree. I'm a big book reader. I loved all the books, and that's why I cared about the movies. But I think around Prisoner of Azkaban, it's just the books differed from the movie so much it made me upset. And I don't think I even watched the last two, or maybe even the last three. I never saw like the two-parter. I never saw that because I didn't care to, because I preferred what was in the books.
Yeah.
So yeah, no disagreement from me. But, yeah.
Great.
Okay, if Evan's got nothing to say, then I'll go ahead and hop into mine. This is probably a cheat and it's a bit too warm for me to say it, but I'm going to say Green Book. That's my fifth most overrated, just because a day or two ago it just won the Oscar for Best Picture, which I just vehemently disagree on. I don't know. It's probably a weird one to say, because I think the ratedisticity of it is weird, because a lot of people like myself thought it was terrible and had really weird race issues, and script in general didn't do justice to the protagonist. So, but then at the same time, it just won Best Picture, and there were a lot of people who just, looked at it and said, this is the exact type of movie we need made, and kumbaya, black people and white people, et cetera, et cetera. So, because it won Best Picture, I feel justified in calling it overrated. But then again, like I said, there are a lot of people like myself that do think it was a terrible movie, so it's a bit of a cheat to add it to the list. But just because it's so hot and we just had the Oscars last week, I wanted to add it to my list.
Yeah, I can't comment on this film. I've not seen it and I don't know anything about it. So
It's my fault it won.
yeah, because you were
I feel
watching
comfortable
it,
blaming
right?
you. Yeah.
I was literally watching it while the Oscars were going, and I finished it just as it was announced, I think, if Twitter is any indicator. So, like, I agree with you, but it was funny because when I first finished watching it, like, I was white-knuckling my way through the whole movie because I knew a lot of the, like, things people were saying about it. And I found, like, some of the, like, nuts and bolts of it being a movie fairly okay. Like, I thought the acting was pretty good. I thought that some of the dialogue, when it was bantery, worked all right. I didn't think there's anything egregious about the way it was shot or anything like that. But around the fried chicken bit, I started to get kind of this, like, okay, like, and the rest of the movie got a lot of side eye for me, and then the ending was a gong show too. I think the movie is trash. I think that just goes to show how relevant the Oscars really are, that they're rewarding a movie like that as the most excellent film in America in 2018. I just don't buy it. They're like, it's a bad look. But I'm with you 100% on this one, Sterling.
Fantastic. I got a safe one. All right, Evan, what is your number 4 most overrated movie?
Let's kick it up a notch. Although I don't know how you guys are gonna feel about this. Some of our listeners might overreact. Wrath of Khan. So Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan.
Okay. I've never seen it, so I'm gonna bow.
You've never seen it? Okay. Well, I've
never seen it.
It's the movie. Okay, I've never been a big Star Trek guy, but I grew up watching the Next Generation. Like a lot of people, and and I loved the show when I was a kid, and I remember a lot of it. But I thought that with the classic movies, I never really watched classic Star Trek. It always seemed too cheesy to me. And then a friend of mine lent me all of them, and I watched 3 or 4 of them. And everybody was always like, if you only watch one, make it Wrath of Khan. It's really good. It's like a submarine movie in space. And it was garbage. It wasn't good. It was overwrought and self-important and it cheesy. So I don't know if it's just that I've seen so many movies that were inspired by it that I just couldn't take it seriously. It could be one of those problems. But I used to have this like kind of lengthy rant about that movie. And I won't subject you guys to that right now, if I remember it all anyway, but I really don't like it. And the more people were like, you're wrong, you have to give it another look, the more my hate fires grew.
Well, I think to simplify things, I think it's safe to just go ahead and say all of Star Trek is overrated. Is that fair to say? Is that fine? Can I do that?
I kind of think so.
Okay. Actually,
I wish it wasn't. I wish Star Trek more often. Let me put it this way: I wish Star Trek more often lived up to what it pretends it is, or what it says it wants to be, or what it very occasionally has been. And that is like an optimistic.
Now we're gonna get some emails.
Yeah. I don't think it does. And I think,
how dare you?
I think the new Star Trek Discovery series is a great case in point for this, because it's very cynical, it's very dark and grim and grimy. And I just I stopped watching it halfway through season 1, and I just don't like it. It's just not what I want Star Trek to be, and that's maybe a problem with me as much as it is a problem with anyone. But there's other stuff out there. Expanse is already doing what Star Trek Discovery is doing. Give me an optimistic vision of the future in Star Trek. Give me some humanism. Give me like cool aliens and some wonder and some adventure and something to like believe in and look forward to. Not like, oh, realistic geopolitics in space. I already have that, and better done in The Expanse, I might add. But Sam, you've seen this movie, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you here. I do think it's overrated. Most of the Star Trek films in general, I think, are overrated. I am, in fact, quite a big Star Trek fan. So, as far as the series goes, yeah, people probably do talk it up a bit too much. But yeah, I'm completely agreeing with you on the Wrath of Khan. It's not the best film ever.
Indeed. All right. Well,
smooth sailing so far.
Yeah. Number 4 for you, Sam.
So let me see what else I have on my list that could potentially add a little bit more fire to this argument. I'm gonna say Frozen. Frozen is my next overrated.
Okay, is that because you want some hot takes, or is that because you believe it? Are you a monster? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah.
Yeah, I am. I've got no soul. Sold it back when I was about 12 for a candy bar to a man on the corner. No, sorry.
No, we're saying fuck again on this podcast.
Curse it up, yeah.
This podcast
okay,
fucks.
Yeah, fuck that that film. I don't know whether it's because the first time I watched it, the person I was watching it with was singing along to the songs in it because they'd seen it so many times, or whether it was just because every time I then got mad about something at work, people were just like, let it go, and I'd be like, just fuck you, dude, like get the fuck away from my desk and never talk to me again. I don't just everything about that film, it's like a bitch eating crackers. Like everything in that film just annoys me. There is nothing redeemable about this animated movie completely. I hate it to my core. I can't even.
It sounds like you're really just mad about how people like wrote it into the ground.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. Maybe if I'd watched it first, but yeah.
Before Moana, my take on Frozen was that I was so glad that it existed because it undid so much of the problems with Disney over the last several years, and like I would say decades, and what it's done to like basically femininity in the world. I thought it was like kind of like addressing that finally, and Moana did a better job of that than Frozen did. But Frozen was great, I thought. But the part that I really think can take a hike, and they could have cut from the movie and not lost anything, is that awkward shit with the trolls matchmaking and stuff. That just never worked. It was kind of weirdly like just weirdly creepy and stuff. Like I didn't think it was cute or funny, and I really every time I watch the movie, I kind of skip past that part.
Yeah.
Okay, so are
you the big
I'm gonna push
Frozen
back
lover?
on both of you. Yeah, I mean, when Frozen came out, I was dating a girl that had 2 daughters, and so Frozen was my life for a while. And the songs are catchy, and I get it. I mean, if it was just a regular movie or whatever, it would probably be rated solidly. But because it resonated so well with little girls, that's why it is kind of rated so upper tier as it is. Because if you got a little girl singing "Let It Go," you're going to play that thing nonstop, and you're going to watch Frozen over and over again. And they don't never get tired of it. They never get tired of it. So, I mean, I think if you got kids, that's why it's rated as high as it is. Because I honestly, I love. I could probably watch it again right now.
You could say that about any animated film, though.
I don't think you can.
No,
I
you
think
can't.
because Frozen separated itself from the pack. It may not be. I wouldn't say it's overrated. I think it's rated exactly as it should be. I wouldn't say underrated either. I think just because the songs were good, the animation was good. Like I said, I know Let It Go verbatim in my head right now. So I don't know.
I could sit a room of young girls down in front of Peppa Pig, and they'd happily watch that for hours on end.
That's a British thing, though. Most Canadians know Peppa Pig, but I don't know if that's penetrated in the States.
Well, besides the point, Evan, what I'm saying is I could put any cartoon on in front of a crowd of kids and they'd enjoy it. I don't think Frozen does anything different for me.
Right, but my point is that Frozen is like an iconic movie for a reason. It's Peppa Pig is an iconic like Frozen is. So how do you explain that?
And Peppa Pig, there are multiple episodes. Frozen is just 2 hours, period, full stop.
Until the second one comes out.
Yeah, so
Oh,
people
fuck
throw in
that.
Peppa Pig, and it just becomes a part of your evening routine or whatever. But Frozen is just, I don't know, it was a force, and yeah, so disagree. But yeah, anyway,
Yeah,
who is it on now? I think
it's on to you.
Yeah,
it's
you.
on me. Yeah, so my number four, it's gonna be Under the Skin, 2013,
Ooh,
with
that hurts.
Scarlett Johansson.
Okay, yeah.
This is, this is toxic masculinity, me saying this, but I think the only reason it was rated high as it was is because Scarlett Johansson got naked. That's the only reason I think people cared about this movie. I think people talk so highly about it. They talk it, this is what people talk about in the art house, like Velvet Buzzsaw, how they talk all snooty. I think that's how people talk about this movie because, oh, it was so deep and it was saying so many things on so many levels about humanity and blah, blah, blah. I watched it. Like I said, I watched it primarily because I knew Scarlett Johansson got nude in it, and she did, and I think that was the most interesting part about the movie. I'm gonna be honest with
That's
you.
what you went in to watch it for, and
Well, I mean,
you
no,
just
I
do
mean,
that, like,
no. I wouldn't say that because there's a lot of movies with nudity in it that are awesome movies, period. But I think.
But did you go
Under
watch
the
all
Skin-
those ones just for the nudity though? Is that
Well, I mean, if I know that there are X amount of good movies, if I know I can pick 5 movies, they're all highly rated, they're all good, but this one I get a bonus of nudity in it, I'm probably gonna watch that.
I gotta have it. I gotta have it. I gotta have it to you, Sterling. We're gonna get emails from people that didn't even like that movie over this.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, just so I've said nudity 17 times. That's not what the
No,
point.
say
of
it
this
again.
was.
One more time.
I think that was really the only reason people they had to justify her getting nude in it because it was so art house and it was so awesome and blah blah blah. But it really, I think it was trying to be deeper than it was. I don't think it was as amazing as people give it credit to be. I thought it was fine. I guess weird sci-fi, but I don't think it landed. I think it was just okay.
I think the problem was that it was trying to take it to the same place that the book took it to, and some of the themes in the book didn't really translate that well to screen, which I think is where its downfall was, is that the book does translate those themes a little bit better, I think. But I agree with you. I think it
is
just
basically Harry Potter. Got it.
essentially, yeah. If you want to get more into it, read the book. I did really enjoy it, but yeah, the film was not the one for me either. So I agree with you there.
It made my top 15 the year it came out. Like I couldn't disagree with the two of you more. I think that movie, that's a movie I can never watch again because it got under my skin. I thought it was amazingly provocative and haunting and awesome and like, yeah, I didn't know Scarlett Johansson could do something like that before I saw that movie. I knew she could act, but I didn't know she could do almost dialogue free role like that. And I mean, you're right. You're not wrong, Sterling. There is a little bit of like a pretentious kind of reception of it, especially when it came out, because there was a lot of talk about the death of the art house at the time, and so that movie kind of came out, and people were like, "Whoa, I guess art house,
so
isn't done."
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't even know if it's all that deep, really. It's just, I think that it's just really haunting, and it's not really conventional in any way because there's barely a plot, and the movie doesn't really tell you even what it's about. You have to kind of parse it. I bet you Sam understands it better than either of us on a purely plot.
Well, she read the book,
because she read the
so.
book. Although I hear that there's a lot of huge differences between the two. So
Yeah, there is.
yeah, and I mean that doesn't usually bother me, and I haven't read the book, so I did love the movie though a lot, orders of magnitude more than either of you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So your number 3 most overrated movie.
Shawshank Redemption.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, I know.
Goodness.
This is just
How
wait.
dare you.
I might have these
We
in
talked
order
about
after
this.
all.
You were supposed to leave this off the list because you didn't want any smoke with me. How dare you?
I forgot that I mentioned it, and I forgot to take it off my list. So there you go. No, here's a caveat. This is a weird one for my list because I've only seen it once, and it was many years ago. But it's considered one of the greatest movies ever made. Like if you look at any list, any review aggregator, anything that does points, this movie is gonna just be at the top. People love this movie. I watched it in college, like, I don't know, 12 years ago, more than that maybe, and I was like, whatever. I just thought it was cloying and sentimental, and like, I love Stephen King, so it's not a knock against him, but it has some of his worst, I think it has a little bit of his worst, like, what's the word I want? Indulgences kind of make it into this movie. And you know, I know I'm gonna get some pushback for this, so I'll just leave my take on that.
Okay.
Let me have it.
Sam, if you got something to say, go ahead and say it.
Destroy me with facts.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the Shawshank Redemption a lot. Even then, it's a different story to what Stephen King wrote it as.
That's true.
If that makes sense. Like he wrote the book or the short story, but the writer was written by the director, so Frank Darabont. So I think it's kind of more his take on the short story than it is Stephen King's like realization of his own short story, if that makes sense. Kind of like, I don't know what I'm trying to say here. I'm just kind of like, there's words in my head and I'm trying to pull them out.
Well, maybe I'm blaming Stephen King too much for what what I didn't like about it. But like also like at this point, like because it's such a well-regarded movie, let me just rephrase too that some of these movies are movies I genuinely don't like. But Shawshank Redemption would be one where I think it's fine. I don't really dislike the movie or anything like that. I just think it's really overrated. Overrated meaning that it's like people like it more than I think it deserves. It doesn't mean that it's not worth liking. But yeah, Sterling as the resident.
Yeah, no, I think it's exactly as rated as it should be. I think it's a beautiful movie. It makes you tear up. I think it's very well written. And just because I just saw Escape from Dannemora last week or whatever, and I think this Shawshank Redemption did everything in 2 hours that Escape from Dannemora failed to do with 7 or 6. I forgot how many episodes it is, but it really, I don't know, get you hooks on the characters, and it's just well written. I don't know. I'm not going to overtalk, and I'm not going to dispute it. You're just wrong. So you don't have to fight back against wrong. You just have to accept that you're wrong.
One of my best friends, Tim, this is an old chestnut for him and I. We talk about Shawshank Redemption, I swear, like once a year, because it's like one of his favorite movies, I think, and he says basically the same thing. He won't argue with me anymore about it. He just says
you don't have to. You don't have to look at somebody and say the Mona Lisa is so stupid. It's just squiggly lines. You know what? I'm just gonna let you have that because you're wrong. There's no point in arguing with it. You're wrong. The end. Okay, Sam, number 3.
Let me see if I can be slightly less contentious here. So my number 3 is I'm cheating again, sorry Sterling, but the new Jurassic World series.
That's overrated.
I think people hate those movies.
Yeah, I thought it was rated.
They do make a lot of money though, so if you're thinking about just like,
oh yeah, true.
Sorry,
yeah, but just
Sam.
I was going by like everyone I know loves them, like when I've spoken to them, but
you are a monster because you're friends with monsters.
Yeah, I just think they're a rehash of the original trilogy or the original series of films. They're telling the same story over and over again. It's just nothing original, and everyone's just like, oh, Chris Pratt, he's so handsome, he's so this, he's so whatever. Yeah, I don't get it. I don't get the fascination. Yeah, me too. I started off liking him like when he was in The Office, but he's rapidly going downhill in my estimations at the moment. So yeah, what did I say? The Office. Yeah, I knew it was something like that, but yeah. Yeah, so yeah, the Jurassic World series is my number 3, and I don't really have anything else to say.
Anything to say that I think they are terrible movies and they just made a lot of money because it's overseas money and blah blah blah. So yeah.
I think you can say the same thing that you were saying earlier, Sam, about animated films in general being like, you know, successful just on the lights of kid attention. I don't think that's necessarily true, but I do think it's kind of true with Jurassic World. I think that the reason why they're successful financially is because kids like dinosaurs, and that's it. End of sentence. You know, they'll just throw the money at that stuff. It's just like they're supposed to be family movies, but I don't really feel like the last two have been very family friendly at all. You know, they're so cynical and dark.
Yeah, they're very violent.
Agreed. Well, speaking of cynical and dark, my number 3 movie, which you're not going to like, Evan, is Logan, 2017 X-Men movie. I thought it was terrible.
Oh, really?
I thought it was, I don't know, I think it was dark just for the sake of dark. I don't think that, I don't know, I think it was a fine movie. Like I say, that's kind of the overrated
terrible
thing
to
about
fine.
it.
That's I got whiplash.
Well, I mean, yeah, so, because I don't know, because I think it was a fine movie, but I didn't like it. That's why
Fair
I
enough.
say terrible. But I think a lot of people loved it, which is why I think it's over. I think it should be rated somewhere in the okay territory. But I think just because it was an older, grittier take, people just fell in love with it and ranted and raved about it. But I don't know. I thought it was a bit just regular. I guess like if I were to write a story about an older, grizzled X-Men, I think this is what I could write. I don't think it was saying anything new particularly. I don't think it was too interesting take on it. I think it was just okay. And I mean, with the young Logan and then the campy little the X at the end.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it came out last year, but you know, spoiler alert, he dies at the end, which is why he's not going to be, you know, Logan in the future. But I don't know. I don't think it was all that great of a movie. I just thought it was okay and fine. But for whatever reason, it just really resonated with people, and people said, "Oh my gosh, I just love this take on Logan, and I hope they make more movies like this." And Deadpool is rated R, so that's why people should make more movies like Logan. And I don't know. I thought it was perfectly fine, and I'd rather see a rated R Deadpool type movie than Logan movie. I don't even understand why it was rated R. I just thought it was, you know, I guess because, you know, the bloody stabbings and whatnot, a little grittier. But
It's a swear. It's the explicit tag.
Yeah, I don't think there was anything worth R about it. You know, I just, you know, but yeah, I just thought it was fun.
Sam, I got thoughts.
I
You
agree
go
with
first.
you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I didn't think it was anything special. I think the only reason people ranted and raved about it was because they finally put an R tag on it when it didn't really need it. I think the whole like advent of Deadpool coming around and that being a comic book movie that does go and take it to the extremes and take it to the gore and the swearing and everything, but it's kind of like, because that's the way Deadpool is. It's meta. He's fully aware of what he is, and they can have a bit more fun with it. But I think when you try and take something as serious as Logan and make it gritty and dark, you do kind of need a little bit more of a lighter take on there in the middle somewhere, just to bring it back up from what it was. But yeah, I agree completely with you, Sterling. What are your thoughts?
That's my favorite statement you've made so far. So I love it when you agree with me.
This is I have to say I've given the impression that I love Logan because I mentioned it a couple times as a positive, right? I don't really. I wouldn't say it's. I think it's overrated with certain people. I think you guys are all hitting on points. You're both hitting on points that I agree with in a certain sense. Like, for instance, I do think that there's a certain group of people that were waiting for. They're always waiting for like a rated R, serious, gritty, swearing and guts and blood and whatever, and that's what they think maturity is. So to them, that signals that Logan is taking comic book movies seriously for once. And
yeah.
I think Deadpool works because it makes fun of that, especially Deadpool 2 makes fun of that tendency to think that blood and swearing and cigarettes are what maturity is, which is something that the Lego Movie 2 also touched on. We talked about this idea that like grim and dark and angry is mature. Especially young men seem to think that sometimes. They go through a phase where they think that. And Logan doesn't work for me because of that shit. In particular, it does have a lot of silly stuff in it, like the clone and the X at the end and whatever, that I don't think works particularly well either. And I thought it was better than okay. I thought it was pretty good, but I thought it was pretty good for an X-Men movie. It's the best X-Men movie. And I thought that there was some real emotional weight in the movie, which almost none of the other X-Men movies have. But I want to tell you guys that I think the secret to that movie's success is that trailer with Johnny Cash's cover of Hurt. I really think that that's the reason, like, because that trailer, I'll still watch that trailer because that the imagery and the way that trailer's cut with that song is brilliant. That's one of the best trailers from the year it came out.
I probably think Days of Future Past is probably my favorite X-Men.
Oh, I mean, it's garbage. Come on.
Yeah.
You put wait. Magneto controls the robots by magnetism with metal in their body. Like, really? You're the rule guy. You hate shit like that. And that's your favorite X-Men movie? Get out of here. Fired.
Hey, they made the rule and they stuck to it. I don't care if it's a silly rule. They made the rule and they stuck to it. It came out of nowhere.
It came out of whatever. Anyway, I hate that movie. So that movie almost ruined Ireland for me.
All right, we're number 2, right? Number 2, Evan.
Okay, number 2 for me is another comic book movie. My last 2 are both comic book movies. This one might get us some emails, but maybe not. Spider-Man 2. Now, it's fine.
Wait, which one?
Spider-Man 2, the one that's called Spider-Man 2, not Amazing Spider-Man
Okay.
2. Not the most recent one, the one with Tobey Maguire.
They've had 6 Spider-Man series. So
Yeah,
gotta be
I know.
specific.
You're right. I should. So
the
this is
Tobey Maguire one.
Tobey Maguire one. So
Yeah.
Spider-Man 2 is considered one of the best comic book movies ever made, and it just isn't. I don't think any of the
I know Black Panther is.
well, Black Panther in 10 years, I think you're going to be right. But Spider-Man 2 is a long way in our rear view now. And people, even when it came out, people thought it was the best that had ever been made, and they might have been right then. It didn't have a lot of competition back then. But looking back on it now, it's still really beloved as like a movie that showed what superhero movies could be. And I never really liked the Raimi Spider-Man movies all that much. I never liked Tobey Maguire in the role. I never liked, I like Kirsten Dunst a lot, but I didn't like her in that role either. There's a lot of things that I think were wonky about those movies in general. Tone, style, the casting, all kinds of stuff. They didn't know when to be cheesy and over the top, and when to be like emotionally like grim or satisfying or serious in any way. I just don't think they work super well, and they almost feel to me like they're making fun of, like, they're treating comic books like they can only really be 1960s comic strips in the back of a magazine. And I don't really think that that's what we should be looking back on and being like, ooh, how great. So I'm not a fan of that one, although it's not a terrible movie by any stretch. It's still pretty good. I just think it's overrated, especially because it recycles the same villain, like symbolically and functionally. Doc Ock is exactly the same story as Green Goblin was, and that was a big functional or mechanical or structural problem I had with it. So what did you guys think of Spider-Man 2? You gonna take me on this one?
No, I haven't seen it since it came out, so I have no thoughts on it.
Wow.
I really don't care.
No, I didn't realize that it was so well rated, to be honest, because I didn't really like it when it came out either. So I really liked the first. I really liked the first Spider-Man, but yeah, past that the series goes very downhill, especially Spider-Man 3 when he's doing the fucking dancing in the middle of the street. Like,
I kind of like that, but I don't like that movie.
Made me want to hurt people.
You see, that's what I mean. Like if the movie had been successful, that scene would have worked. But instead, I would agree that it's a very confusing moment. We could do a whole podcast just on that scene. Honestly, I have so many thoughts about it. And pop culture never stops talking about it. One of the best jokes that got the biggest laugh in my audience for Spider-Verse was where they made fun of that moment, right?
Yeah. No, I get it. It's I think the original Spider-Man films are really good in that they were quite close to kind of like the feel of the original Spider-Man comics in a way, in that they're kind of campy and peppy, and they've got kind of that feel to them, that sort of tone. But yeah, I agree with you that I don't think Spider-Man 2 was as great as everyone said it was.
I kind of feel like there's Spider-Man movies or comic movies for middle-aged people 20 years ago. You know what I mean? I wasn't middle-aged 20 years ago. I'm rapidly approaching middle age, but I wasn't back then, so it's not what I wanted from Spider-Man, I guess, when I was growing up. What's your number 2, Sam?
Yeah, so I'm going to take it in a completely different direction, and I'm going to name a musical. I'm going to say Les Miserables.
Oh, this is going to be good.
Because I just thought it was awful. It was so bad. And I can't even put into words now that I've said it out loud. I should have written more notes about this one. But I just thought it was so pretentious. I love the stage play, but I don't enjoy the film at all.
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, I'm probably the biggest Les Mis fan here, so I'll speak to it, but I don't really disagree. Yeah, well, because the first time I was really introduced to Les Mis was the movie, and I thought it was great, and I fell in love with it, and I cried at the end. And then I watched the stage play, and I was like, "Oh, the movie's terrible." You know, yeah, that was garbage. Yeah, because it doesn't compare. The first one I listened to was the 25th anniversary one, and I mean, it was beautiful. Just the singing was on an entirely different level. So then when I went back and actually watched the movie, I was like, "Oh, yeah, no." I think the story still gets me, but as I said, I think watching the story in a play just serves it better, and you do appreciate watching it in movie form. It's great and all, but yeah, the movie is not great. It's really not great.
Yeah,
we appreciate Anne Hathaway for digging deep, and it's a really gritty performance, and I think it was an exceptional performance for her, but I don't think the movie as a whole was great. And I think um, I don't know that I think Hugh Jackman really, showcased his acting skills. So I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
it's
can't
weird.
you
I
can't
think,
fault the
yeah,
performances of the actors in the movie itself. They are great, and
except Russell Crowe.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, everyone loved it so much, and I feel like the people that loved it are the people who didn't get a chance to ever see it on stage. So it's just a completely different thing on stage. So when you do view the movie, it's just terrible. I was so bored throughout it as well. I was just like, why is this still going? Like, just need this to be finished already, and it just never did. But Evan, do you have any
Yeah.
thoughts on this one?
Like, okay, I'm this is one where I can give some thoughts on just Les Mis in general because I've seen versions of it, but I never watched the most recent film. And the versions of it that I saw when I was a kid, I thought were dumb and boring too. I'm kind of interested in the history of it, but I think I saw the 1998 one with Liam Neeson and Jeffrey Rush and Uma Thurman, Claire Danes, and all them. And I think that's the version the most recent version I've seen. But I might have seen
Yeah.
3 or 4 different versions of it. And I don't know, it's fine. Whatever. I never saw the new one. I don't think I'm going to. There's a TV series also where they got David Oyelowo to play not Jean Valjean, but what's the name of the bad guy, the cop?
Javert.
Yeah, he plays that guy, and I was thinking that was kind of strange.
Yeah. So Sterling, what's your number 2?
All right, my number 2 is speaking of superhero movies, Iron Man 3. I hated it. I hated it. I hated it. I hated it. So I don't know. I think it's probably going to be a little bit of bias on my end because I really didn't like it.
I think this is a case
but
though where you're giving a movie that you don't like. I honestly don't think that movie is rated all that highly in general. Like people, a lot of people hate that movie. I feel like.
Well, no, I honestly hear people say that Iron Man 3 was awesome. So I don't honestly hear people say Iron Man 3 was bad all too often.
All right,
so
fair enough.
It may not be on best of all time movies, but I hear people say Iron Man 3 was good, and I just don't get it. I think it was very silly. I think it ruined the universe, especially the end. I thought it's like because they found the not super serum, but they found like the cure for diseases and something like that. And then Peppa had superpowers and all that kind of stuff. I was like, there's no way the movie ends like that because that changes the universe. That there's so many consequences of this being the end of that movie. And that's how they stuck it. So I don't know. I really didn't like it. It made no sense to me. So Iron Man 3 is definitely on my
That movie did sort of
overrated
start the
list.
whole like Marvel resets too much kind of thing where like you're right, they introduced things that should have huge consequences going forward, and they kind of just hit the reset button like they did with Tony very dramatically where he breaks all his suits. But there's also things that you can't walk back like the extremist virus. I like that movie a lot, but I don't like as long as you're not going to complain about the Mandarin twist, then whatever.
I mean, that was okay to me. I just didn't like. Oh, now the Iron Man, the thing in his chest is optional. He just wears it when he feels like it. And now she has superpowers, but she never came back. It's just
they cured her afterward, right?
Yeah,
I wanted them not
yeah.
to.
So
I wanted her to stay powered. I thought they were going to do that on purpose because maybe Gwyneth Paltrow wanted a bigger role, and I totally thought that she deserved it. But that was back when they weren't allowed to have superpowered women in the Marvel universe because of Perlmutter. So
yeah, I don't know. So
Yeah.
what'd you think of it, Sam?
No, I agree. I think it wasn't the best Iron Man film, but again, I agree with all your points.
That's 2. I'm loving it.
are you a 2 fan though, or are you the there's always one? Are you an Iron Man 2 fan, Sam?
No, I liked the original, and then
Yeah, I think the original
just go downhill from there.
I think the original is sort of like the most likable one. Like I think Iron Man 3 is the best film out of the 3. It's the only one that's almost really a film. But Iron Man 1 is a crowd pleaser for sure.
Yeah.
I think it's 1, 2, 3 in my opinion.
I think 2. I watched it again not too long ago, and I couldn't get through it. I think it's the worst MCU movie by like a margin, like a huge margin. We'll talk about that a little more later.
I think I tried to do like a countdown of like Marvel films when Infinity War was coming out, and I think I got to like Iron Man 2 and stopped. So not too far into
That's
it.
early. That one killed you fast, huh?
Yeah.
Indeed, here we go. All right. Well, what is your number one most overrated movie?
Let's jump to the other side of the comic book divide, The Dark Knight.
Oh my
That
goodness.
I think that
Oh my
is the
goodness.
all-time in my lifetime
Ah.
most overrated movie.
I
don't.
wasn't prepared for that. Oh.
Yeah, I've talked about it a little bit before, so I'm sort of surprised you didn't see that one coming. But like, look, it's fine.
Oh my
if anything, I
goodness.
think The Dark Knight's overrated, but The Dark Knight Rises is a little bit underrated. And I do really feel like all three movies, none of them really work. Like the whole thing that they're doing doesn't really work unless you watch all of them. But like from everything from like the actual filmmaking involved to the politics of it to how long it is unnecessarily to some really egregious issues around the way the legacy has like kind of coalesced in pop culture, which really isn't the movie's fault. But we're talking about cultural impact because how do you talk about overrated or underrated and not talk about that? I just think The Dark Knight's really overrated. And I remember when it came out, there were a few negative reviews. There weren't many. It's a pretty well liked movie for a lot of really good reasons. But people were threatening other people over it. I mean, now that's normal now on the internet. People threaten people whenever a movie comes out now. But when that movie came out, there was a kind of a group, the same people I imagine who are out there brigading Captain Marvel, brigaded Black Panther, brigaded Ghostbusters, whatever, the kind of people who just don't want anyone that isn't white and a dude to succeed at anything. Those people were threatening critics when Dark Knight came out, and they were like, and they didn't like it. And back then that wasn't commonplace. So there's just this whole legacy around that movie that I think is super toxic, but like in general, I just don't think it's as good as people think it is. I mean, don't get me wrong, Joker goes a long way. Like, that's a killer performance. But I never really liked Christian Bale as Batman. That's a big problem for me. I don't think that the Two-Face storyline really works. I think that the whole idea that it's supposed to be like a serious movie, like it's like The Wire, but superheroes, I think that's pretentious. And I don't think it really works. Like, I don't think that it goes that far. It's still too silly and a bit too morally simplistic to really get there. So anyway, that's a really small... That's another one I have a rant. I got into a fist fight over that movie once, actually.
I hope you believe that, and it's not just a hot take for the sake of having a hot take.
It's not a hot take. I've felt this way since it came out. I've had this opinion
terrible
forever.
take.
It is a hot take. It is, but it's not just to have one. I really do feel this way, and I've been a pretty lonely person ever since, honestly.
I think a lot of people do agree with you, though. I don't think it's just
Maybe
it's just an
now.
opinion you have, but I think that as a whole, the trilogy is kind of overrated by most people. I mean, I fall into the camp that I absolutely love The Dark Knight, and I love that series, and I love Christian Bale as Batman, and Heath Ledger's performance was fantastic. But then in the same breath, I do think a lot of people watched The Dark Knight and kind of invested more time in it because of what happened with Heath Ledger after the film. I think that's what generated a lot more buzz around the film, was the fact that he did die after doing the role, and a lot of people were blaming the role for why he did end up taking an accidental overdose. Whether that was the case or not, I don't know. But I can see where you're coming from and the reasons why you kind of you hate it.
I think like when a dude dresses up as the dude in the movie and kills a bunch of people in a movie theater, you really have to start asking yourself like some questions about this thing you love, like, honestly. And I don't think it's the fault of Batman fans that happened, but like there's a certain amount to which I think the Dark Knight movies reward an aspect of like sort of neo-fascist, like a lone person with a gun settling things with their own hands, kind of like frontier justice shit that like really isn't doing particularly American culture any good. And I think Batman and that whole trilogy is right at the center of a lot of like social issues we have right now. But it's not really the cause of them. It's just an expression of them.
Okay, so if you want to have 1 as overrated and 3 as overrated, I'm perfectly fine with that. The series, quote unquote, as a whole can be overrated, but The Dark Knight is certainly not overrated. Okay, the last 15 minutes, I'll agree with you. It doesn't really land great. I think, the last 15 minutes needs work, but everything before that was absolutely
even the
goddamn
bits
amazing.
in China. Like, you really thought it was necessary for there to be half an hour in China?
What did I just say?
Okay,
Everything before the last 15 minutes.
I'm just shocked. Even people that violently disagree with me about this typically agree with me about the China stuff.
People, they give Heath Ledger his flowers because he died after this performance, but the performance itself was absolutely amazing. I think the movie was amazing. I don't know. Yeah, the last 15, it didn't really land. I don't think it stuck the landing. Yeah, I think it kind of just ended. He just kind of hung there, and the ships didn't blow up. Yeah, I think that was whatever. But I think everything before that, it was directed amazingly. I thought it was beautiful to watch, and just hard disagree. Yeah,
There are so many good videos
picture
about
you
how
saying it wasn't.
incomprehensible the action sequences and stuff are. Like, not just like the rapid cutting, but like trucks that like teleport around like the city that they're shooting it in, because they shot it in 3 different cities. Like, there's just a lot of filmmaking things too that like I just didn't. I don't know. Anyway, go on.
Yeah. Anyway, Sam, what is your number one? Sam.
I'm so sorry, everybody.
we could talk all night about The Dark Knight, I think.
Yeah, we could.
But I'm probably gonna just take it down a notch here from that and say that my number one overrated film is The Witch, the 2015 horror movie.
Interesting, yeah.
Because
I never saw that one.
Yeah,
that hurts so much.
Yeah, because people just loved this film, it seemed, and everyone was going on about it, and it got really hyped up. Yeah, and I was like, okay, I've got to see this because obviously it's worth a watch, and I was bored. I was so bored for the entire film. Like, I can't even remember parts of it because I was that, like, just not suckered in by the story. I just didn't think it did anything for me at all. And yeah, I just thought it was just poor. I thought it was a poor film, but obviously, Evan, you love it.
Like, a lot. But then again, like, I will give you this though, Sam, like, hype ruins everything.
Yeah.
Like, Sterling's response to that seems to be to avoid trailers and avoid marketing, so he doesn't get too hyped or doesn't like can maintain that surprise. And and I respect that, but my reaction to hype and the way hype ruins things is to basically lean into it real hard. And so I watch all the trailers, I get into the conversation, I anticipate things, but I don't judge things before they come out, and I don't let the hype sway me one way or another. I really try hard not to do that. But I do tend to come out of a movie the first time like liking it more than I will on subsequent viewings, and occasionally I'll watch a movie and not like it, and then like it way more later. Like I think I mentioned last time that I didn't like No Country for Old Men when I first saw it. It took a while, right?
Yeah.
But The Witch, I think, is just one of the finest horror movies that has been made in our lifetimes. And I could go on and on and on and on about why and make like a huge essay argument about it. But really, anybody can watch that movie and have that goat Black Phillip running around just wrecking stuff and not like it. It's just somebody I don't understand.
Well, then I guess you don't understand me.
I'm sorry, Sam. We're breaking up.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'd fight you if you were in Canada, but no, I'm just kidding. But like, I do love this movie a lot. But you know what? I don't think it's for everybody. So I actually don't. Like, I don't feel that like much of like an urge to like take you on about it, just because like I can see that. I can kind of see that this movie would like really turn a lot of people off. I feel like that about Under the Skin as well, honestly. Like, I don't think I could really fault anybody for not enjoying that movie or not really finding much to like about it. Same with The Witch, I think,
I mean, I've heard good things about The Witch as well. I haven't seen it, so I guess when I do
you'll
see
hate
it,
it.
A tiebreaker. Yeah. But speaking of overrated horror movies, I've got a hot take for you. My number one most overrated movie is Get Out. Jordan Peele.
What?
I was waiting for this. I thought this was coming.
It was fine. It was okay. It was solid. But I mean, just the hype around it, the fact that people called it the best horror movie in forever. And just, he's had one movie and people are calling him, Jordan Peele, the best horror movie maker of our generation. If Us turns out to be great, then I can go ahead and agree with that, because there honestly aren't too many solid horror movie films I've seen in a while. But I thought this was just, I mean, it was cool, it was solid, I enjoyed it, but I don't think it was, oh my God, it's saying so much, and it was the best. It's the best horror movie I've seen in years. I mean, yeah, I thought what it was saying was kind of on the surface, and I thought it was pretty straightforward. I thought it was solid, but I don't think it was amazing. I wouldn't put it on my top 10 of the year list. I thought it was, fine. I thought it was a solid, horror flick, but I just don't get the hype that this thing got and how everybody just cries and loves it. And I mean, I appreciate a black director getting his roses while he can smell them. And I love all that kind of stuff. And I do think it was solid, and I'm glad to see more stuff from him. And I hope Us is amazing, but I just don't agree with people saying that this was just so, so amazing, best picture, blah, blah, blah.
Well, I think it was a little overhyped by people like who were just like shocked by like how good it was in spite of it being a first filmmaker. And I just think it resonated because it was saying some stuff. Like I don't think the horror part of it, the equation, matters that much. Like it's not a particularly scary movie. And it's a little violent, but it's not super violent. Like it doesn't have a lot of, it doesn't tick a lot of the boxes that horror generally needs to tick in order to make a big splash. But the social commentary, I think, is what people were really responding to with that one. They just had never seen anything like that in a movie before, especially not a movie that broke as wide as that one did. Like maybe in like an indie movie or like a 70s movie or something back when movies were always good. Just kidding, but you know, I just think that's what got the people. I think that it you know, it was just like, whoa, this movie is effectively scaring me on some level that's weird, but also telling me all the stuff I didn't really realize about like the perniciousness of white appropriation of black culture. Because it would have been pretty easy, I think, to make a movie about like a movie that kind of centers black folks and like says, okay, here are the things about racism and white culture and the way it appropriates black people that, you know, that's kind of bad and scary, and been pretty straightforward. But I think the movie takes it a step further with the body jacking stuff, making it like about like how white people kind of want to be black and the lengths that they'll go to. And I think that conceit alone is brilliant, and maybe the reason why people like it so much.
Go ahead, Sam, because I gotta
Got thoughts?
push back to that.
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed it. I avoided it for the longest time because it did have so much hype about it, and I was kind of falling into that trap of like people are only liking it because it's a commentary on race culture. And like I said in the last podcast, I don't really understand that being where I'm from, but so I avoided it forever. And when I actually watched it, I really loved it. It was just incredible to watch, and it really got under my skin. Like most horror movies don't kind of freak me out, but that one just kind of like, I think it just hit a nerve with me. So yeah, I kind of agree.
Yeah, I feel like this is gonna sound bad to say, but to white people, yeah, this was a saying so much outside of the blacks, and it was so important blah blah blah. But to somebody like me, it was just kind of saying surface obvious stuff. It was like, yeah, obviously, you know. But to somebody that doesn't think about that kind of stuff, yeah, it is interesting to get kind of that kind of stuff thrown in your face and all that. So I feel like Sorry to Bother You is something that went there. Sorry to Bother You, it really swung for the fences.
But you didn't like that one either.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. So Sorry to Bother You really went there and had stuff to say, but didn't stick the landing. I think Us stuck the land. Sorry, not Us. Get Out really stuck the landing. It did exactly what it was trying to do, but I don't think it actually, reached too far. But I think, as I said, that's a me thing because it wasn't really saying stuff I didn't know. It wasn't saying anything that wasn't obvious to me, but somebody not in my demographic may have really, resonated with them.
I think you're right.
If he would have, a Sorry to Bother You would have went out there and knocked it out of the park and stuck the landing, that would have been the kind of movie where I would have said, yeah, that would have been Get Out level for me. But I don't, like I said, I think Get Out just, it was solid. It said what it was trying to say, but I don't think it really went as far for me as it went for other people. So
well, let me ask you something though. Like, do you think that part of the response to it from like black folks in the States was because they just like, they get it like you do, like where it's something they think about all the time. And it's like, it's sort of straightforward to them. It's not like a big surprise like it would be to white folks to start thinking that way. But do you think that them being able to see a movie that people were...
Yeah. I think it's the representation and all that kind of stuff, and that's what added those extra layers to black people. That which is why it got rated as high as it did.
Right, I agree. And I think that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of think as well that it was kind of the right level for people in my demographic, if that makes sense. In that that people like me kind of do need it to be that sort of surface level sort of talk around race and representation and stuff like that, because if it went any deeper, it'd kind of go a little bit over our heads, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would be interested to see what you think of Sorry to Bother You, Sam.
Yeah, I've not seen it yet, so I'll have to watch it.
These are pretty personal lists, so I can understand why. To me, it's overrated. It wasn't as good as people rate it to be, but I can understand why somebody would rate it to be so amazing and all that kind of stuff. But either way, Alex, I'm looking forward to seeing Us. But
me too.
So that is the end of our overrated section. This will be our transition section. If we had an ad to read, this is where it would go. So wink, wink, nod, nod. But yeah,
Don't cut that. That's
oh,
good.
yeah. Like I said,
Ask for the
you,
sales, Sterling. You know that.
yeah, and as for the community, like I said, if you got some pushback, if you have some thoughts on what we said, feel free to email us in. We want to hear from you. We want to do some listener feedback.
Okay, yeah,
so.
but look, I'm gonna have to fly. If you want me to fly out and fight you over the Dark Knight, you have to pay for my plane ticket. Okay? I'm like 5'6". I'm like 30 or 40 pounds overweight. You know, whatever. You can pay my medical bill too if it's a place that doesn't have free healthcare.
And if you maybe if you have a top 5 you want to let us know about, then you could always let us know about them as well.
We want to see your list for sure.
Yeah.
Indeed, yeah. We want to hear what you think, so feel free to write in sirrsmovies@gmail.com. But yeah, so let's go ahead and move on to the more fun section. What do we think our underrated movies are? Let's start with you this time, Sam. What is your top number 5 most underrated movie?
Okay, so my number 5 most underrated movie is the Robin Williams film What Dreams May Come.
Oh, that is okay.
love that
We're going there. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So
let's go there.
It's just, I love that film on so many levels, and I thought it was a really great show of grief. I think it's just a really touching movie, and the imagery of it is great, and I loved the world that Robin Williams ends up in when he dies, and I love that fight and the whole idea that love continues after you're dead, and everything that he goes through to get to his wife and bring her back, and help her realize her like grief and everything, and then seeing his kids again, and just everything about this film just is incredible to me.
You just described the reverse Inception. Everything you just said. Yeah.
Well, it kind of like it is in some ways. Like it's about some of the same things Inception is, which is that like even if you have like catharsis that exists in a state we wouldn't normally consider to be real, some kind of fantastical state like a dream or the afterlife, it still has an impact, right? I love that movie. That's one of my favorite movies of all time. But the one thing is, as good as Cuba Gooding Jr. is in the movie, I've realized in recent years that there's something propish about the way his son becomes a young version of a black doctor because it's the only person his dad respects. And I feel like that kind of makes the one black character in the movie a bit of a prop, and I don't love that. But other than that, it's really good, and I think Cuba Gooding Jr. is so good in it that it's like,
Yeah, I think that's my only, I guess, bit of pushback, because I guess kind of reverse of what Evan was saying about Iron Man 3. I think it's rated pretty highly. I think people put this on the top list of, awesome movies and best Robin Williams performances and that kind of thing.
I think it's underseen. Like, I talk to people a lot, especially younger than me, who've never even heard of it. But I don't know if I've ever met anybody who didn't like it.
Well, okay. Well, Evan, let's get going with you. What is your number 5?
No, after you.
After me? Okay, fine.
You go first, bud.
All right. Well, my number 5. I'm cheating a bit when I say this. Wait, are you back, Sam?
Yeah, I am. Sorry.
Okay.
Did you hear the kid come in?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. I didn't know how to get him out of the room. I don't know him that well.
Is it his own room?
No, it wasn't. It's not his room. Okay.
Thanks for coming in, but you gotta go, buddy. You gotta go.
He's like 3. I don't know what to do with kids. I was like, he was trying to talk to me, and
this invasive species entered into the space that I've occupied.
Do you like Frozen?
He was like, I think he was asking me for a laptop, and I was like, I didn't understand what he was trying to tell me, because I had you guys talking in one ear, and I can't understand kids' accents here anyway. So, oh god, yeah. Sorry, guys.
No, that's good. That laugh is worth everything.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and do mine. My number 5. It's a bit of a cheat because we said movies, but this is a TV show. I don't know. When I talk about my underrated TV shows, I always go to this one. It's Pushing Daisies. Brian Fuller show. There are shows that I absolutely just loved. Community, I loved. West Wing, I loved. Probably those two. There are others I like, but just from go when you press play. These are shows that I just absolutely love, and Pushing Daisy was on that list. I think the last 3 episodes or something like that, after they knew they were getting canceled, I think it really dove off a cliff. But before that, I mean, this show was awesome. I loved every bit of it. If you haven't heard of it, it's a show about a pie maker who has the power to bring people back to life, and he's like a detective and stuff. If he touches a dead body, they come back to life, and he touches them again, then they're dead for good. And this chick he's in love with, he touches her once, and so she comes back to life, but he can never touch her again, so they can't, like, cuddle and all that kind of stuff. And they have a relationship through a piece of plastic. I think they only had 2 seasons. Yeah, but I mean, I love I love this show, Pushing Daisies. So I don't know, have either one of you seen it?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
No, I've never seen it.
I don't think like this is a cheat in 2 ways, because everybody loves that show. But it's really underseen though. Again, like there's a whole gap of people who like are younger than us who've never even heard of it, because it came and went so quick. So I think you can kind of skirt it by just on those grounds. But I think it's pretty universally beloved by people who have seen it. Well, it is a really good show.
Yeah, I put it, the people that like it love it.
Yeah.
And everybody else either hasn't heard of it or just kind of came and went.
Yeah.
I think by underrated, I think this should be up there in highly rated TV shows, but nobody's either haven't heard of it or watched it or whatever. Yes, yeah, so
even
it
I
should be
would
rated higher because it was an awesome show.
I gotcha.
Indeed. Okay, so since we're moving to you last, what is your number 5?
I'm gonna cheat too, since that's what we're doing.
Cheater.
My cheat is every Darren Aronofsky movie except for Requiem for a Dream, and The Wrestler. So
you super cheated.
I'm gonna do a bunch, but really it's only half of his movies. So like everybody kind of likes Requiem for a Dream, or at least it's considered like an important movie, or big. It was a big movie for people around like probably on the upper end of 30. And then like people like The Wrestler, got some awards consideration. Black Swan, same thing. But all his other movies are really underrated. Like The Fountain, Mother had like kind of a really strong reaction, but it kind of came and went. People forgot about it already, and it's a fantastic film. And then Noah is way better than it gets credit for. It's so good and so weird, but nobody likes it, and it's nobody ever sees it. It's too strange, I think, in some ways. Things like that. So I really like his movies, but The Fountain, Noah, and Mother are awesome. The Fountain is one of my favorite movies of all time, maybe my favorite movie of all time. So I kind of stretching a little bit because I couldn't pick which one of those 3 movies to put in here. But I also think even as much as people like his other movies, I don't like them enough, because Black Swan, Wrestler, and Requiem for a Dream are all killer good. And Pi, nobody remembers Pi, but it's also amazing. I think you would really like, of the ones I mentioned, Sterling, if I understand anything about your taste in science fiction, I think you would really dig Pi. But eat some Tylenol before you watch it if you haven't seen it, because it'll give you a headache.
Hold on.
Got to unpack a bit. That's a lot, right?
Yeah.
Who's the director?
His name's Darren Aronofsky.
You monster. Yeah, I've heard of Darren Aronofsky.
Well, why are you asking me then?
Well, because I've seen all the movies you listed, but I couldn't think of the director's name.
Yeah, that's fair.
Fair. Oh yeah. I've heard of Pi. It's one of those ones that people said is awesome, but I never actually got around to watching it. But yeah, I like Aronofsky's movies as well. I think he's very specific type of filmmaker that does a lot of interesting stuff. I think The Fountain's overrated. I think Black Swan's overrated. I think The Wrestler is rated exactly as it should be. Same for Requiem. Mother, that's a polarizing film, and I never saw Noah. So I think like he's a very specific type, and if you like it, you love it, kind of thing. So
yeah, that's where I am. He's one of my favorite American filmmakers for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, he's great. So that's my take on it.
Hot take.
What's your favorite of his movies?
My favorite of his movies is it's probably a tie between The Wrestler and The Fountain.
Fair enough. I'm glad to see a Fountain fan. There was a time when Sterling said it's overrated, but it's generally not a well-regarded film. There's people like we were talking about before with Pushing Daisies. People who love it, and then most people either forgot that it existed or hate it.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I know a lot of people have issues with it, especially the ending, but I think it's always in the conversation. You know, when people talk about the best top movies or whatever, it's
even
always
just visually you have to talk about it, because there's never been a movie that was visually done the way it was done before it or since it. So, you know, and he does it like every time. Noah has special effects that nobody's ever tried too. And I think Mother might, but I didn't really pay as much attention to how Mother was made because it's sort of a more straightforward movie. It doesn't have a lot of big, crazy special effects the way that Noah and The Fountain do. So, but yeah, Mother is polarizing. You're right. People walked out of it, booed it, clapped at it, etc. At every screening it ever did. But I loved it a lot.
Yep.
Awesome.
All right, Sam, number 4.
Okay.
Let's see what you got.
So talking of polarizing directors, my number 4 is Sucker Punch.
Oh, okay.
Which is the Zack Snyder film. And I'm in the group of people that actually really likes Zack Snyder films because I kind of think he just does what he does. And you either take him, you like him or you hate him. He's kind of like a Marmite kind of character in that a lot of people like accuse him of misogyny and all sorts in his films. But actually, I don't think he is that kind of person. Well, I certainly don't get that feel from his work. And Sucker Punch,
I mean, you definitely get it from Sucker Punch.
Yeah.
Maybe not the rest of his work.
Yeah.
You get it from Sucker Punch.
but I think it's kind of meant to be in Sucker Punch. It's kind of meant to be that way. Like everything.
I'm not even disagreeing with you.
Yeah.
I pretty much like Sucker Punch as well. You know, it got a little bit of backlash because of kind of the subject and the teen girls or whatever. But I think it was a pretty good made movie. But I do kind of want to push back with you on the sexism or whatever it is about that movie. It is a little weird at times tonally.
Yeah, I think a lot of people go into his movies, kind of expecting there to be some sort of misogyny or something in those films that they can pick on, and it kind of gets to the point where they kind of pull those themes out of it. So yeah, but for Sucker Punch, for me, like everything in that film is the way it's intended to be. I love the fight scenes, I love the visual effects, I love the storyline. He kind of doesn't develop his characters in this film, and that's kind of the whole point of it, is that no one is supposed to know kind of anything about her backstory other than what you kind of get shown at the very beginning. And then everything that happens after that first beginning introduction sequence where she first gets into the asylum, like there's like a 10-minute sequence which shows her entire time there as it is, and then everything that happens after that is kind of how she's viewed it. It's kind of like how she's seeing the world, and that's kind of how she pictures herself in this kind of sexy kind of world where she has the power. And okay, yeah, kind of visually it's kind of a little bit Lolita in some ways, but I everything about that film is the way it's intended to be. So I do remember some conversation about the meaning of it and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I think it is kind of deeper than kind of what people gave it surface credit for. So I do think there's some kind of discussion to be had about what's it about and all that kind of stuff. So I do think it's better than people give it credit for, but I don't know. So yeah, I liked it as well. Yeah. All right. Let me go to my number 4. So this one, I'm going to call it underrated. It got its due. A lot of people talked about it, Netflix movie, but people dismissed it and talked about all the issues with it. But I genuinely liked it as a movie. We're talking about Bright. Netflix's Bright with Will Smith, 2017. I watched it before all the reviews and all the talk about it came out, when it was just a movie. So me and my wife sat down and watched it, and I enjoyed it. I liked it for what it was. I like sci-fi type stuff. I like magical mysticism type stuff. And this is the kind of Lord of the Rings stuff that will work for me, without the 12 pages of backstory for every sentence and that kind of stuff, But I just had fun with it. I didn't think about it on too deep of a level or whatever. I just thought it was a fine, interesting movie. I enjoyed watching it, and I hope they make another one, that kind of thing. I just enjoyed it, for watching it, sitting down 2 hours watching a movie. Yeah. So I think people shitted on it a lot, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think it's underrated as well. I do see the problems with it that people talk about. And I like, one of my problems with it is that it's a little bit of a remix of a bunch of stuff that David Ayer had already done. Like parts of
Yeah.
it feel like end of watch, parts of it, you know what I mean? But I thought it worked more or less as a movie. It had some things that I wasn't expecting to see. I thought it was like one of the better Will Smith movies in years.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, like I saw it like the night that it came out, like, and it almost made my top 15 that year. Then I watched it again a little while later after the hype had kind of, like, after there was a bunch of think pieces about it and stuff, and I started to notice the seams in it a little bit more. So I'd say it's slightly underrated. I wouldn't put it on a list, but I did like it better than most people did. Totally.
And that was was that a Super Bowl movie? There's something about the release of that where Netflix said, "Hey, this exists and you can watch it right now." I forgot what
That
day
wasn't
that
the
was.
Super Bowl one. That was Cloverfield Paradox, which was garbage. So.
Oh, Cloverfield. Yeah, okay, sorry. I remember one of them Netflix things where they just said, "Hey, this exists. Watch it."
Yeah, not this one, but yeah, they do show a propensity for like, hey, this is coming out in 2 days, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I enjoyed it. Now I think they were making a 2, right?
Well,
oh yeah.
maybe
Well, they
not.
greenlit it
Max
before
Landis
it
is
came
kinda-
out or something like that. Yeah.
And Max Landis is about to have a Me Too moment if he hasn't already. So he's a pretty that's a guy who can't get out of his own way. So I don't know. If there is another one, I don't think he'll be involved. And what I expect is that he's going to be nobody's going to touch him. So he'll be persona non grata, and then the second movie will never get made. Ayer will move on to doing other things. He got burnt by Bright. He got burnt by Suicide Squad. I think he's going to go back to cop stuff probably.
Yeah, I'm looking at Will Smith's IMDb. It was announced, but it's not even in pre-production right now. Because I remember that being a big conversation that they announced Bright 2 was coming before Bright 1 was even released or something like that.
It was based off of viewership or something like that too.
But
The first night.
I viewed it and I liked it. So if they make another one, I'll be there. But yeah. Okay, Evan, what is your number 4?
Sam, I gotta shout you out because if I was numbering these, this movie would have been way lower on my list. It would have been way closer to number 1, if not number 1. But Sucker Punch. I think Sucker Punch is an incredibly when I wrote my review of it, it was the only review that I saw of this movie at all like it. It was like a long, ridiculously impassioned defense. I read all the arguments about it being misogynistic, and I didn't agree at all. I still don't, even though Zack Snyder's... I like his older work better, we'll just say that.
Yeah.
But Sucker Punch I thought was him really trying something, and I think the fact that he got burnt for it is why he never did anything like it again, and probably never will. And that's a shame, because the movie is brilliant. And like in a year, it came out like right around the same time Inception did, and they're very, very similar in a bunch of different ways. And people don't notice that. They can't. A lot of people watch it. They can't tell what's real and what's not. And I didn't really have that problem. So to me, the way it plays with reality is all about catharsis and how you can. In Inception, it's about dreams. And it's really about watching movies. Like if you feel something because of a movie or a story or a dream, it can be real. And in Sucker Punch, they're literally trained in the real world by their psychologist to use fiction, to use role playing as a way to overcome their trauma. And that's what all the action and all the crazy stuff we see. And I do feel like the reason why people think that it's misogynistic because of the costumes and stuff is because they don't really know about certain things about the production. And I mean, that's the kind of thing, like if you're just watching the movie to watch the movie, you wouldn't know this, but the women who were in the movie all designed the costumes. So, you know what I mean? Like, none of those girls were wearing something. And I mean, Jenna Malone, for instance, is like a staunch feminist, I think. And like, I don't think she would have done it if there wasn't this. But I don't know. That's speculation. But like, they all had a hand. Amber Heard had a hand in Emma Browning or Emily Browning. She had a hand in her costume. They all did. I think they got a bit of notes about like rough overall direction. So like, there's the kind of like Sailor Moon kind of outfit that Baby Doll wears, and then there's a kind of more like medieval like armor that one of the other girls wears, Sweet Pea, I think. And then there's like, they all have a different thing that they're doing. Yeah. All that stuff was really cool. I love that movie. I could go on forever. So Sam, what was your number 3?
So my number 3 is Constantine.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, because everyone kind of shits on it. Everyone kind of shits on Keanu Reeves in general. I find with his acting, they find him a little bit wooden, but I kind of feel like this. Well, some people would argue his character's not at all like the comic book character that it should have been, but I found that he actually fitted this role really well. He kind of went with the character as it was, and I just think it's a really, really great film in general. And the director of this, this was actually his first feature length film. He'd previously only ever done music videos, so that I thought that was really great for like how that came across. And I everything about this film, Keanu Reeves is great, Rachel Weisz is great, apart from the accent, I suppose, is not great. But yeah, and Shia LaBeouf is in this film as well, so you know.
Oh yeah, that's right, he is.
So nothing could be bad with Shia LaBeouf is in it.
I got 2 or 3 Transformers movies that.
We're just pretending they don't exist, all right?
But yeah, I really like that too. It's probably one of my favorite, darker. I really like. That's one of the ones I go back to as well. It did make my list of go backs, but I've seen Constantine probably, I don't know, 10 times. It's a fun one to watch.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I'm surprised that you guys picked this one though, or that you did, Sam, just because I don't love it. Like, it's all right, but I agree that Keanu Reeves is super underrated. But I think it's kind of overrated maybe because everybody I know loves it. I don't know anybody that doesn't like Constantine. I know people that don't like Keanu Reeves even to this day somehow, but I don't know anybody that doesn't like Constantine. That said, though, I might be the one guy who thinks that it's overrated a little bit.
I think
that'd be my take.
I don't think it reviewed very well with the critics.
You might be right.
Yeah, yeah, it's got 46% on Rotten Tomatoes. So,
but
certified
did we
rotten.
learn anything this week? Rotten Tomatoes is like the way they get that is so like, yeah. Let's have another teachable moment. Kids at home listening to this, do your research about how Rotten Tomatoes works, please, before you take those. People take it with a grain of salt already. That's great. I'm sure you do, Sam. I'm not trying to pick on you, but. Please, because like the way that website works completely betrays the way that most people use it to talk about movies, and it's for anybody who's seriously into movies and knows this stuff. It's aggravating. It's like I don't know what to compare it to even. I don't think there's ever really been anything like Rotten Tomatoes in terms of how we talk about movies. But yeah,
which is why it's so prevalent.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is I'm not sure if a Rotten Tomatoes score is a really good sign that something is over or underrated. I guess, but
yeah,
fair,
no, I agree.
Fair enough.
It was. I think a lot of people, the critics hated it. Audiences tended to either love it or hate it. In that the comic book nerds kind of hated it because it's not at all like the comic book series.
I do remember
and the character
that.
is completely different. And the storyline is different to what the comic book series is about. But if you don't know anything about the comic books, then actually it's quite an enjoyable film. So I think that's kind of where it comes in.
I get that. I guess there's always an angle to find somebody being mad at it. And I think I do remember there being some discourse around it where it was like, this isn't really John Constantine. What are they doing? He should be British. I remember I read Hellblazer back in the day, and I read the Colors of Magic, the Tim Story, what J.K. Rowling ripped off, even though she won't admit it, for Harry Potter.
How dare you?
Well, you look this up and then tell me you disagree. But
I won't.
But anyways, so I knew Constantine was, and I think I actually might have been one of those people when I first saw the movie where I was like, this isn't really Constantine. What is this? But I really liked, particularly Peter Stormare as like Lucifer or Satan in it. He killed it. He was so good. So I like the movie overall in spite of that. And I'm usually fine with like, okay, here's the American version of Constantine. We know it's not the same as whatever, but this is our extra version. And comic books usually have so many different versions of the same character that who cares about one more?
Yeah.
That's why I don't get mad at different versions of the Joker. Even Jared Leto Joker was not the worst part about Suicide Squad.
No.
But that's a whole other conversation.
It is.
Gotcha. Indeed. Okay, so let me move on to my number 3. This is another one of those where I think people that have heard of it love it. When I see people discussing it, the random people that have watched this movie, they love it and they think it's awesome, but I don't think enough people have, and that's Formula 51, aka the 51st State, one of Samuel L. Jackson's lesser, raved about performances. He plays a chemist, I don't know. It's one of those I just randomly watched because it had Samuel L. Jackson, and this is one of my, this is my quotables. It's just whenever I don't know, whenever somebody doubts my skills in my head, I'll say, "What do you think I am? A rank fucking amateur?" Just as I was a line in the movie, it's just because this is the ones I've watched a whole bunch of times. I go back to, and there's just nobody, like I said, the people that have heard it and watched it. Oh yeah, I like that performance. That was a fun movie. I like watching that, but it's like I said, it's one of those under when people talk about Samuel Jackson, they talk about Pulp Fiction and Nick Fury and all that kind of stuff and Quentin Tarantino stuff. But this is one of my I don't know, it's one of my favorite Samuel Jackson performances. It's just kind of different than the other stuff he does. He's just so cool and so much swag, and I don't know, it's one of my faves.
Elmo McElroy.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I love that movie too. I'm glad.
Elmo
I
McElroy,
could have put
but
that
yeah.
on my list, but I would have thought that it was maybe too obscure to include. Like, I don't know if you guys
Yeah,
noticed,
see?
but my list is pretty. It's mostly movies that everybody's heard of. But Formula 51 is awesome.
Yeah.
It's so good.
It's like, so there's a line where he gets blown up at the very beginning of the bad guy
Yeah, the
boss. He
lizard.
goes,
That's
he goes,
Meatloaf, isn't it?
I believe so. Yeah, Meatloaf. Yeah, he goes. He fucked me. I'm surely ass invaded, and I had never heard of a phrase that made I had made it, like it just because I had to put it on subtitles to figure out what he said. He goes, "I'm truly ass invaded." So that's another one of the things I just say in my head. He fucked me. I'm truly ass invaded. So I don't know. It's there's so many quotable lines. It's just a fun movie.
Of
to
all
watch.
the Tarantino ripoffs from that era, that's probably the best one, honestly.
So you can't just compliment it. You can't just let me have. You
No,
got to dig into.
Got a
it,
Tarantino.
I'm fine with people. I still like the Boondock Saints, man, and that movie is really messed up. But and it's as Tarantino ripoff as it gets. But I don't think that's a criticism necessarily. I was just thinking in my head, of all of them, that one is the best. Maybe.
Yeah,
You kind of disagree that it doesn't feel like a British Tarantino kind of, it almost feels like a movie a British Tarantino could have written, but it is fantastic.
Yeah, it's got Emily Mortimer and Felix D'Souza, Robert Carlyle. I loved him in Full Monty. So it's just, I don't know, it's just...
That's why you like it, Emily Mortimer, because you're a newsroom guy.
Yeah. And like I said, Full Monty is another one of the ones I just kind of, it's one of the fun ones I like to watch. But yeah.
You got me there, I don't know that one.
The Full Monty is great. Yeah, it's like
you
peak
seen-
British film.
Have you seen Formula 51?
I haven't, no. No, it's
Okay,
not one
you're
I've seen,
missing
so I
out.
can't really comment on this one.
And
just-
Sterling, another one. Have you seen Ravenous with Robert Carlyle and Guy Pearce?
I don't think so. Doesn't ring a bell.
Add that to the list, buddy. I think you'd like it.
Okay, we'll do indeed. All right, well, that's a favorite of mine. What is your number 3?
Okay, so I'm going to go with my only superhero movie on this list, well, technically speaking, Thor Dark World. It is generally considered to be the worst. Yeah, it's generally considered
That
the
is
worst Marvel
surprising.
movie. I don't think it's the best Marvel movie. I don't think it's even in the top 10, but I think it's way better than people think it is. When I was growing up, I really liked He-Man, and I particularly liked the Dolph Lundgren He-Man movie. And there's never been anything really like that. You don't get these whiz bang sci-fi fantasy movies that are trying to be space and swords at the same time. You didn't used to get those super often. And I kind of feel like Thor: The Dark World was like a throwback to the 80s, where they would just put some guys in rubber suits and just kind of throw them at the screen. And I really like those cheesy 80s special effects movies that are all basically copies of Star Wars. I really like those kinds of movies, and Thor: The Dark World felt like a good version of that. I do think it has a weak villain. I do think that some of the humor hasn't aged super well. But generally speaking, I'm surprised by the legacy it has, or the impact that it has, because I think it's nuts and bolts pretty friggin' good. And I don't understand. I can never. To me, the criticisms of it, and you guys can give it a try if you don't like it, and see if you can make this work. But I don't never think they're all that coherent. They're always something really specific. I don't like Kat Dennings or something like that. I can never get stuff out of people where it's this is why the movie doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
Some structural or story problem that is actually persuasive, instead of something little that somebody didn't like, which is usually the kind of criticism I hear about this one. Not that that's wrong. People can have those takes, but if the movie's going to be universally reviled, I'd like there to be a good reason. I just don't think there's a good reason on this one, even though it's not amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was okay. It's not my favorite Thor film by any stretch of the imagination, but it was okay. I have no reasons for disliking it. I just didn't overly enjoy it. I don't think it captured my attention as much as Thor 1 did, or Thor Ragnarok did. So
Thor Ragnarok is much, much better.
I love that film. I think the humor in that one took me by surprise, but that's not what we're talking about. Stop distracting me, Evan. You always do
Sorry,
this.
I'm sorry. I know.
Yeah, I agree with you. It probably is underrated, but again, it's just an okay film for me. What about you, Sterling?
I thought it was dumb, and I think it's rated exactly where it should be. Yeah.
Yeah, but what didn't you like about it? Let's see.
I just thought it was dumb. I
That's
think Natalie
lazy.
Portman checked out, and I think the
I
the
agree about
portal
that.
stuff didn't work, and I don't know. I just thought it wasn't a very interesting movie. I thought it was just I think this is a paint by numbers Marvel before Marvel knew what it was going to be. So I don't know. I didn't think it was very interesting, very exciting. I thought it was just, hey, blah, here's a comic book movie, and yeah. So
I honestly don't think Thor Ragnarok works without it, because it sets up the whole idea that Odin has been running around being a bad guy a little bit and conquering planets and killing and committing genocide and stuff. I think it's sort of better. I think it works better in the structure of the whole MCU in hindsight. But when I saw it, I like the idea that, whoa, wait, the Dark Elves really actually have legitimate beef. Like, they're mad for pretty good reason. And one of my disappointments with the movie is they don't go into that enough. Like Chris Eccleston is awesome, and you barely even know it's him playing the bad guy. So I got my complaints about it.
yeah, okay. I don't know. It was So I'll let you have that. But no, I'm saying I don't have anything else to say. I just don't think there's a whole lot of, besides you loving it, I don't think there's a lot of argument to make that it was actually a good movie. But yeah.
Fair enough.
Okay, number 2, Sam. What is your number 2 most underrated film?
My number 2 is From Dusk Till Dawn, the Robert Rodriguez film.
So you got a few on here that I don't know. I don't think that's underrated. I think that's pretty well rated.
But wait. We've all pretty much been challenged on this once or twice each, and we've all found a way to explain why we think it's underrated. So, Sam, I think if you weren't gonna, you probably were, and we're just interrupting you. But can you start with why you think it's underrated?
Because a lot of people just said that it was like over the top, and there wasn't much of a coherent story to it, and that it was kind of pointless, and there was like too much gore, and that even then the gore wasn't great, and they just didn't really like it. But so I think that's why it's underrated, in that a lot of people just didn't really grasp the film in general. I thought, because a lot of people said as well that a lot of reviews that I read online said that they felt that the characters were underdeveloped and they didn't understand what was happening in the story, and they felt that the brothers were like needlessly cruel without meaning to be. But I just
Some
didn't
people
see
should
that
stop
at
going
all.
to get popcorn in the middle of the fucking movie.
Yeah, because
I'm with you on this one.
Yeah, because I love everything about it. That the gore and the cheesy like monster effects was great for me. It added to it, especially when the band is like playing with like the dismembered bodies that they've made. Like that's great. And even the small little things in it, like when they set fire to the clerk at the start of the film in the store that they rob, like he falls into the popcorn when he's on fire, so he's popping all the corn. Like that's just brilliant. And even like that's just surface level. Like there's a whole scene where Quentin Tarantino's character is a convicted sex offender, and he kills the lady they've got as a hostage. And there's this whole like building scene where George Clooney is like asking questions to Quentin Tarantino's characters, like, why did you do this? Why did you do that? Like, and you see quick flashes of the scene of the scene behind, like what Quentin's done to this woman. And then, George Clooney's character loses it, and he's like grabbing his brother, and he's like, I love you, but why do you do this stuff? Like, this is not how it's done. I'm a professional thief. I kill people because I need to kill people. Why do you kill people like this? Like, what is your problem? Like, what is your like malfunction? And it just like that whole scene was like great for me. And it just like, and there's like a whole undertone to this film of similar things, and and the story of I could go on about this film all day. It's like
There's
one of my favorite
going
films.
On.
Yeah,
that people don't notice. Like the whole movie is kind of a morality play, like every character. And I think Harvey Keitel and Juliette Lewis are so good in it.
Yes,
like they are so good. And before that movie came out, all George Clooney ever did was ER, so nobody knew he could do something like that. I think I did. I remember seeing people complaining about this shift. Like a lot of people liked it when it was a crime movie about that felt more like a Tarantino movie, and then sort of disliking it when it felt like a cheesier, over the top, kind of witty but still over the top Robert Rodriguez movie in the second half, the vampires and stuff. But I think that tonal shift, like a quarter or third of the way through or whatever, is brilliant.
Yeah,
like, and I think everything about it is setting itself up to be kind of funny, but also still kind of serious at the same time. It just walks that tightrope really well. I'm with you. I don't know if I really think it's overrated, but I do remember people complaining about the same stuff you're talking about. So
underrated.
Or sorry, I don't know if it's really underrated.
Yeah.
What did you think of it, Sterling? I'm assuming you've seen it.
No, that's the same. I just, when people talk about Tarantino's best films, I think it's always in the discussion. So, again, I think it's fine. It's not honestly. Well, I think that's when we talk about horror. I think that's kind of more what I think about in my head too, because that's body horror. It's a bit scarier to watch than a I don't know, whatever random Hereditary, whatever random thing counts as a horror movie these days. I think that's a bit scarier to watch. So yeah, I liked it. But yeah,
I saw it for the first time at my birthday party when I it must have been the year that it came out, because I was just a kid and we didn't know really what it was, and we rented it and I watched it with a bunch of other boys that I had over to sleep over, and we did not know what we were getting ourselves into, and two kids went home. They were upset and went home, and then three of those kids, so one more that stayed, and then those two that went home, I never was allowed to hang out with after that. Their parents lived with them within a mile of my house. My mom let us watch rated R shit when we were kids and stuff, and I had no concept that other people's parents didn't let them do that stuff. So I never really understood, and people's parents thought that I was a bad influence, I was trying to get their kids to watch bad stuff. But really, I just had no idea that there was rules about that stuff, because I knew the difference between fantasy and reality, and I didn't. If something was too scary, I would just hide my eyes till it was not scary anymore, or I'd go away and stop watching it. I didn't freak out. I was pretty desensitized young, some would say. But that's not. I guess I got a personal anecdote on that one, but.
Oh yeah, indeed. Okay. All right. Well, let me get into my number 2 most underrated, and honestly. This I adore. I love this one. Oh, it's so underrated, and people don't give it the credit it's due. If it wasn't for my number 1 most underrated movie, this all right. So it's gonna be Swiss Army Man, 2016. Paul Dano and Daniel Radcliffe. No,
people love that movie.
No, they do not.
I don't.
Well, maybe in maybe in hindsight, people that appreciate it maybe wrote articles about it. But when it came out, it was panned. It was trashed because people, it's the farting body movie, blah blah blah, that kind of thing. So
I thought people were more it's the farting body movie.
Yeah, no, I mean people. I think people laughed at it or whatever, and I think people thought of it that way, but they don't really appreciate it for the movie that it is, and that'll come into play with my number 1 as well. But yeah, so this, this is when we talk about our best theater experiences. This is probably one of my top 5. It's just when that movie ended, it felt so, I don't know, uplifting or so, I don't know, touching. I don't know. This spoke to me. It's a weird thing to say. I mean, that's why people kind of do pan it and kind of dismiss it a little bit, because it is about a dead body that farts, so it's hard to, take that seriously. But if you do take it seriously and you appreciate the movie for what it was at face value, I mean, it really spoke to me. I really love it. This is probably one of my favorite movies in the past decade.
Oh,
so
we're gonna revisit this one, because fuck that movie.
Yeah, people. Yeah, like I said, people like you, they just don't appreciate it.
No,
you
straw man a little bit though. You gave a rendition of the kind of person doesn't appreciate the movie.
Well, no,
it doesn't
I just
describe me. I have my own particular issues with it, but I don't want to get into them now because I think I need to watch it again. Honestly.
Yeah, just this is one of my first Paul Dano being serious, whatever, and Daniel Radcliffe just jumping out there, because it's Harry Potter, so. You don't expect him to do. I mean, his checks are good for life. He's going to make all the money in the world just off residual. So nobody expects him to actually risk it and go out there and do a serious, different, demanding type performance. And I wouldn't say. Well, I don't know, demanding is a weird.
He's actually done quite a lot since Harry Potter. Yeah. He's actually come to his own as an actor.
as I was saying, you appreciate for him for actually going out there and doing the interesting roles and that kind of stuff. And I think
Yeah.
this is definitely
Yeah.
the who
He's
you
living
could
his best
get
life.
to be this. Yeah, who you could get to do this role. I think the list is very short to make it what it was. The fact that this was Daniel Radcliffe doing this role. Oh no, I loved it. So I'm gonna stop.
I'll give you this
you
though.
guys
Like I think they're both those actors are fucking fantastic in it. You know, that's one thing I can't take away from it.
The actors were fantastic. The movie sucked though.
No, I have problems with its themes, but the like what it's saying, I think, is what I have a problem with. But like, and kind of where it fits into a genre kind of conversation, like its context is the kind of movie that it is. That's a lot. That's like a high level. We'll do that another time. But like, I do think the performances are awesome. So I'm with you there about that much at least. Sam, did you see it?
No, I have it on my list on Netflix, but I haven't actually watched it yet.
That'd be a very interesting to see kind of how you fall tiebreaker wise on this one, because yeah, I loved it. Probably, like I said, probably my top 10, and I wish people appreciated it more. But
It'd be interesting to see what you thought of it, Sam, for sure. Yeah.
Okay,
I'm very
I'll
curious.
watch it this week, and I'll let you guys know
Sweet.
next week.
all right, number 2, Evan, what you got for me?
Okay, so this would have been further up my list, like back the other way, if not for the Sucker Punch thing. But I'm gonna go with Only God Forgives. I like Nicholas Winding Refn a whole heck of a lot, but most people didn't really get Drive, even though it's a pretty well liked movie. And I think people either slept on or just outright hated Only God Forgives. And generally speaking, I think it's because they watched it wrong, which I kind of hate saying that, but there's every now and then a case where I think it's true. So what bothered these guys about Drive was that they tried to make a movie that basically deconstructs the action movie hero, like the sort of like doesn't talk much, kills with impunity, super violent, super macho kind of action guy. And it's only when Ryan Gosling's character in that movie becomes more like, he starts to become more vulnerable, he starts to care about is it Carey Mulligan? Yeah, Carey Mulligan and her kid. Does he start, and it starts helping her husband even though he doesn't deserve it at all. Like there's all this stuff that he does that makes him more of a human, and even the song kind of reflects that. So that's the thing. And they make this movie and nobody understands it, but everybody loves it for the wrong reasons. So they both got kind of pissed, I think. So they go and they make Only God Forgives, which is them basically saying, okay, you didn't get it the first time, now let's see what you make of this. And they make a movie that everybody thought was going to be Ryan Gosling beats up Thai people. But it actually is not that at all. And it's a complete deconstruction of a bunch of different problems with masculinity, with the way that like there's a certain amount to which there's like a permanent tourist kind of subculture where they go to other countries and do things like and exploit those countries. Either they become criminals in those countries because they think they're untouchable, all this stuff. It's got to do with like mommy issues and how a toxic mother can poison her sons. So I related to that. It has some of what you're talking about with From Dusk Till Dawn, where two brothers, one of which is a sex offender and a pedophile, and the other one who feels a certain sense of responsibility and loyalty to his brother, but doesn't endorse at all what he does, and their kind of conflict that, you know, all this kind of stuff is going on. And there's also a whole pile of religious subtext in it, too. It's just a really fantastic movie that I almost never stop thinking about, and nobody likes it. I'm like the only person that likes it, so very underrated, I think.
No,
yeah, go ahead.
I loved it as well.
Oh, thank you, Sam.
Yeah, it's like I had a moment when you said the name of it where I was like, have I seen this film? And I had to quickly Google it. But yeah, you brought it back into my memory, and it's like, yeah, I love this film, and I'm gonna have to watch it again because you've just reminded me how much I loved it. But like even like the visuals and everything in this film are just fantastic. Yeah, I completely agree with you. Like people did not take this film for what it was at all. So
they wanted it to be something different, which I kind of get. It was marketed like it was going to be a little bit more of like a straightforward crime movie where we'll get to see Ryan Gosling beat up a guy in a suit, and there's that shot where he's like pulling down his sleeves and he's wearing his like waistcoat and his dress shirt, and he's kind of really serious and he looks really cool. It's like it's like Ryan Gosling as cool as he possibly could, but the marketing doesn't show how he gets his ass he just gets destroyed in that fight. And that's the whole point of the movie, is this guy thinks he can go to Thailand and white boy his way through everything. Nah.
Yeah.
And I really like that message.
Yeah, no, I agree completely.
Sterling, we're gushing. What
I was saying, no, I wish I could see it so I could give you pushback and hate it how much you liked everything I love, but I didn't see it, so
I like
gonna
most
take your
of
word
what
for
you
it. Yeah. except for my Swiss Army Man, which you just hated. But yeah,
I gotta watch it again. I feel like the strength of my feelings about that movie are maybe unwarranted. That's one I think deserves a second look. Honestly, I do think that. I said fuck this movie, but I was just being cheeky.
All right, well, drum roll, please. We're down to our number one most underrated films. What you got for me, Sam?
Okay, so my number one most underrated film is a film that I watch probably at least twice a year, probably as much as I watch The Fifth Element, probably. But this film is G.I. Jane, the Ridley Scott film from '97, with Demi Moore in it. Like, I love that film so much, and I think there are so many themes in it that are still as prevalent today as they were back then when it was being, commented on, and just everything about this film is amazing. It might be unrealistic, and I think that was a lot of people's problems with it, that it was like an unrealistic view of the Navy SEAL training camp or whatever, and a lot of people said that Demi Moore was too good looking or too sexy or whatever for the role because
only ugly girls can join the series.
Apparently so, but but I think one of the reviews that I read about it was that her nipples were the best part of the film, which I just thought was a ridiculous thing to say about a film in general, especially with the themes of the film. That what it's talking about is that women can do just as well at anything a man can do. Yeah, so I love this film. I'm rambling again.
Oh, it's okay. I was going to say about this one that I was thinking about it actually really recently because it was featured in a video essay that I was watching. And I can't remember what the topic was, but it reminded me that I need to watch this again. And one of the weird things with Demi Moore's sexiness in the movie is she was just coming off of striptease, where she'd gotten breast implants and was had come out as basically a sex symbol.
Yeah.
And the 1-2 punch of that movie being pretty bad and G.I. Jane being not bad but not well liked was that her film career kind of plummeted after that. She sort of disappeared, which is really unfair because she was awesome. And I think G.I. Jane is her at her best. And Viggo Mortensen is in that movie.
He is, yeah. And he plays a really great role in it as well.
Yeah, he's a bad guy.
Yeah. Well, he kind of comes around to it, but I think he just kind of gives her the respect, I think. Well, not at first, but he kind of comes around to respect her and kind of keeps everyone else in line in the film as well, in that he plays a really good role in that everyone else in the unit kind of hates her, but he's kind of like, fine, if she wants to come do this, she wants to get her ass handed to her, I'm not going to be any nicer to her than I am to anyone else. So, which I think is a really great message, is that you shouldn't treat anyone different based on their gender. So
yeah, I think it's due for a reappraisal, and I think it'd be really cool if somebody could make a movie nowadays that combined the best parts of that one and Courage Under Fire, one with Meg Ryan, and because that's a bit of a cheesy movie, but if somebody could bring those two together somehow and kind of do the best things in both of them, I think that movie would kill nowadays.
It would have to star Jennifer Connelly, because if that is not Demi Moore reborn, I don't know who is.
Yeah, I got thoughts, but I like Jennifer Connelly a lot, and I sort of regret that she's like Demi Moore 2.0 because she could have been a lot more than that.
I mean, looks alone,
Yeah, she does look a lot like her, and she does not age
at all.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that'll bring me to my number one movie, number one underrated. And so you're going to roll your eyes at this one, but it's Black Panther.
Oh, you son of a bitch. You son of a bitch.
It's literally just won Oscars. How could it be underrated?
It's something to laugh at, but
just made a mockery.
Okay, so hold on. Let me make my point, because I know it's something to laugh at because it made so much money and because it got nominated for Oscars and all that kind of stuff. But if you look at any Oscar thread, if you look at any discussion about it, the first thing people are going to say is, oh, it's because it was black people, and we owed it this because of this, and it wasn't that good, and had all these blah 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 blah. And so I think people rate it high because it made a bunch of money and because it's black people. But I think all that aside, I think it was an excellent movie, period, at the end of the story. I think the fact that it existed and all that it is why it should be rated higher than it is. I think, like I said, it's rated high, but it has an asterisk next to it, and I don't think it deserves an asterisk. I think the fact that the script was what it was, and I mean, it's just like I said, just walking out of that theater, I was dumbfounded. It's just like, it's not only a quote unquote black superhero movie, but it talked about important things. It had a message. It had a good script. It was a good Marvel movie on its own. So just all of that combined, just the fact that it managed to be everything that it was. It should be rated higher than it is. But anytime you hear a discussion about it or see there's always that, yeah, but it's, I don't think it was that good of a movie. It had this plot hole, it had that, and people only liked it because it was black movie and this, so it's just, there's always asterisks, there's always this and that. But I think all that aside, I think it was an amazing movie, period, at the end of the sentence, just because everything it did, everything it was, the costumes, just the script, the fact that it had so much weight on its shoulders, because there are movies, we're talking about Captain Marvel, we're talking about Wonder Woman. There's just so much, weight on their shoulders for X amount of reasons that people bring into the movie. And I think Black Panther had all that plus more and still came out being a good movie, first and foremost, a good Marvel movie, good black representation movie. It spoke about things. I think, actually, just for everything that it was, I think it deserves more credit than it gets.
It's also one of the best movies in like the modern day, like genre, like sci-fi, fantasy, comic book pantheon for female representation too, and it just did that as a fucking bonus. It didn't even have to do that, right? And it did anyway.
There's so much female representation. Like half the Oscars, I think that stat is correct. Half the black, half the women.
Half the winners were women. Are you trying to say?
Yeah. So I think what was the stat? Like there's 3. Hold on, you talk about it. I'm going to come back to this because there's something I really wanted to speak about.
I was just going to say, I kind of get why you're picking it. Like I think what we could learn from this whole thing, I said that, you guys have made a mockery of the process, but I'm just joking. Like what I think we can learn from this is that from a certain point of view, almost any movie we can think of like that has any kind of cultural impact at all is underrated or overrated, right? It's been fun kind of trying to figure out how we were all gonna, I'm sure that's part of what you guys had to do too, because I definitely had to do that. I had to think about like, on what level do I think this movie is underrated? And I generally picked movies that are real underdogs, like movies that I feel like I'm the only person in the world that likes, or thinks anything good of, or thinks has redeeming qualities. But you two have picked a few that you have sort of more interesting and complex reasons for picking them than almost anything that I picked. So, and this Black Panther's included. I know, Sterling, that it's just an excuse for you to gush about it again, but I like listening to you talk about Black Panther, honestly, so I don't mind.
Oh, yeah, so here's the tweet.
Oh, here it goes.
Only 3 black women, this is from Kyle Buchanan on Twitter, only 3 black women have won Oscars for anything other than acting, and 2 of them were Oscars this past weekend, and those are both Black Panthers. So black women winning Oscars for anything other than acting, only 3 all time, and 2 of them were because of Black Panther. So it's just the levels of what this did, female wise, script wise, just there's so much representation. Shuri, everybody loves Shuri, and not because she's a woman, not because she's black, just the character. And everybody loves Okoye just because of the character. There's so much that this movie did, period, at the end of the sentence, that I really feel like it doesn't give the credit it deserves. But yeah. So I know it's just won Oscars. I know it's, the 5th, I think 5th or 3rd highest domestic, it made the most money domestically of all time, the 3rd highest domestic movie. But still, I think I think there's so many asterisks next to it that I don't think it deserves. So yeah, that's my number one.
Rules. For me, when I laughed about you picking it, it's like, the asterisks, I know it's there, but I feel so alienated from the people who do that, who have to be like, well, it's just because it's pandering to black people. Like, I feel so alienated from that point of view. It's like how I feel about this Captain Marvel stuff, where I'm just so alienated from the people that think the way that the people who are like, oh, woman in a superhero movie. I feel like those aren't even, like, I don't even understand that. So I always forget that there's people like that out there, Unless they're really making themselves heard, and I hate that the internet gives them such a great platform to do that. But yeah, I'm with you actually on this one. I think you've argued well that deserves to be considered underrated.
Yeah, top 3. It's the 3rd highest grossing domestic film of all time. And I still feel like it doesn't give the credit it deserves.
You haven't got to talk for a while, Sam. Sorry about that. What do you think? You got any thoughts to add into this? You want to throw some love on the pile?
I mean, I originally had this on my overrated list, but I took it off
Oh.
because I knew that
And
Sterling would hate me
I am
forever.
certainly glad you did, because that would have been a conversation. That
Yeah,
would have
I
been a
mean, you've
conversation.
kind of turned me around, I think, now to understand a little bit more why it is as highly rated as it is. But I mean, from a purely, my view is purely from a comic book movie perspective, in that I didn't overly enjoy it in general as a comic book movie, but that had nothing to do with. I obviously I understand that it was a big cultural giant in everything it's done, and it certainly deserved the Oscars that it did win. But in the same, I just didn't really like it as a film. I think that was why I took it off my list in general, is that I didn't really have any arguments as to why it was on there.
Do you think like because it's like the most political of all the superhero movies probably ever made, overtly. Like, so a lot of superhero movies are political in a subversive kind of under the current kind of subtext way, like most things are. But Black Panther's very overt about it. Did you find like that understandable? Because you're the one person like in Canada, we get so much American culture that it's easy. Like there's no sense to which like I don't kind of get the political messages because I'm Canadian, but was there a sense to which like you're watching this movie, you're from the Isle of Man, did all the political stuff in it kind of penetrate for you? Like did you were you feeling that stuff, or was it kind of just like, you know, like some of the stuff we've talked about before where it's like you still have to kind of like acclimatize yourself to it?
Yeah, no, I think I still kind of needed to acclimatize myself to it, and that I could understand the hype around it in the media, but when I viewed it, I wasn't viewing it through that lens. I was just going to see a horror movie. I was just going to see a comic book movie, and I didn't overly enjoy it as a comic book movie, but I can understand now the impact that it did have for the people who were watching it with that lens on. So I think that's probably why I didn't understand the hype around it, is that because I didn't understand the impact of it.
Yeah, like I think that's where, like Get Out, kind of that's where the most important. That's what makes it a special movie, I think. Like, I'm way more to Sterling's side of this than you are, but like,
yeah,
one of the things that I would say is like I don't think it's a perfect movie. I think it has a couple of problems. Its pacing is relentless, and I don't think the CG action stuff at the end works. But ultimately, those are overcomable problems. That don't really make, like, you know, when I think about the movie and like I remember when it came out and I wrote my review too, I was going to make a much bigger deal out of those issues just because like I wanted to check some of the like gushing love of it, and I asked myself like, why do I want to do that? Like,
yeah,
like I would forgive flaws that are way worse than this in much like lesser movies, so why not this time? And I just feel like it was the same thing. It was like I was having a knee jerk, and I'm not saying your response was knee jerk, but I was having a knee jerk at the time response to just the huge like hype around the movie. Like I was just kind of like, you know, and I think sometimes like again like one of the themes that's coming out of this, I think, as I keep talking about it, is that hype is a killer. Like hype destroys. Like, you know, sometimes you react to hype and you don't even know you're reacting to hype. You don't even know that hype is the thing that makes you not like something, and that sucks.
Yeah,
you know?
I think for the longest time as well, and this probably plays into why I wasn't overly keen on the film, was that I tended to avoid things with a lot of hype, because if people talked about it too much, it completely destroyed my interest in seeing it. I just wasn't interested anymore because like so many people were talking about it. It was probably the weirdest reaction to have, but I just had like no interest in it. And then when I went to see it, it just...
Well, you might be somebody who likes discovering things, right? Do you feel that way? Like that you like to discover things and maybe like have them for yourself or turn other people onto them? Is that more your like way of...
Yeah, I guess so. I'm kind of more of find something that's not really that well known and fall in love with it.
Ain't nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, and I think as well, I didn't really like the comic book character of the Black Panther. So that probably plays into it a little bit as well, in that he's not my favorite character, in that you've got all this technology and things that could literally change the face of the world, and you're just keeping it to yourself. Like,
Yeah.
Well, before Sterling slams so much Clown Royal that he's gets rushed to the stomach pump.
I feel like he's booking a flight right now to come and beat me up.
Yeah. Thanks for listening to us. Like even me, Sam's criticisms are a little more major than mine, but you let us have our space to kind of talk about the movie
again, like I said, I think it's fair that you guys are coming from different perspectives than I am.
Yeah.
So like I said, as I said earlier, it's a really personal list that I think this should be rated a lot higher because of everything it did. And there are obviously people out there that couldn't care less. So
No,
yeah.
I'm with you. I think on it. I think you've convinced me at least that it can belong on the list.
Then my work here is done.
All right.
All right. So you've built up a lot of pressure to yourself, Evan.
I know.
You
I
made
don't
yourself
know how
the
the fuck
number
I'm supposed
one.
to follow that.
Yeah.
Like, I can't really.
What?
But my number one is Jupiter Ascending.
Okay.
So
That is-
yeah,
okay.
look,
Yeah.
I don't mind it being on your list.
Let's
but
do
number
this.
one.
No,
Okay.
yeah, it was always going to be a number one for sure. It's not it's not the most underrated movie like that I could think of. Most of the most underrated movies I could think of aren't on my list because they're underseen. Like they're movies that nobody has seen. They're indies or they're really obscure. So I didn't think I thought it was a good idea to find one that like people really talked about and either like that they panned essentially. And Jupiter Ascending was dead on arrival. People had their forks and knives and they were sharpening them for months before it came out. I was following its production. I was following all the movie news around it like I do. And people were ready to piss on it before it ever came out because it looked stupid to them. They didn't get it. They thought it was silly to have Channing Tatum with pointy ears. They just, all these really cheap, lazy, unimaginative pot shots to take at the movie. And then it comes out and that confirmation bias of basically doubling down on what you already think anyway just kind of carried the day, I think. And like to me, when you're watching the movie, it's not perfect and there are definitely some dumb parts, but it's like every 5 minutes in that movie has more ideas in it than like whole science fiction movies are built out of. Like moment to moment, if you look at the technology that they've come up with for it, if you look at all the cool alien species, all the robots, all the stuff that's going on, there's just nothing like it. Before Alita, it was the closest thing to a live-action anime movie that actually worked. It also is a stealth Disney princess story, which I thought was kind of cool and unexpected. And I think all the performances are pretty canny. Like, I really like Jupiter as a character. She's genre savvy. She doesn't have to be over-explaining things too. She kind of gets the idea. I love the message that time is the only currency that matters. I think it's a very, very strong message for nowadays where we tend to undervalue our time and overvalue money.
I liked it better when Justin Timberlake did it.
In Time has similar themes, and it's similarly, I could have put that on my list too. That's a very underrated movie, I think. But I like Jupiter Ascending better. Partly because I like giant space robots and shit like that more than I like, 60s fashion or whatever it is, 30s fashion and big cars. But In Time is still awesome. But yeah, Jupiter Ascending is the way that movie was received, I think it was so unfairly misjudged. It was crushing. But I'm also a big Wachowski's fan. I like everything they've done. So I'm kind of, that's my bias there, is I'm a big fan of theirs. And, Jupiter Ascending, I hate the response that it got. I wish more people liked it like I do.
Yeah.
How'd you feel about it, Sam?
I liked it as well. Yeah. I was one of those people who watched it and was like, I don't understand why this is getting so much hate because I found it thoroughly enjoyable.
You're my guy tonight.
I'm always your guy, Evan.
We're going to conquer the world. And we're going to make everybody be half human, half bee. Like Sean Bean. Speaking of one of the weird, dumb things in the movie, but Sirling, you're probably going to be the odd one out.
Yeah, I mean, and for reasons other than what you said, I actually was looking forward to it. I'm a big sci-fi stuff. I thought it looked weird, and I like, as we're talking about, it had a kind of a Fifth Element-y type vibe to it. So I was looking forward to it, and I thought it was dumb for a multitude of levels. I thought it was silly, and the skate. The rocket skates didn't work for me, I thought it was the bees didn't work for me. I just thought it was silly on a number of levels.
I'll give you the bees, but if you think about it as a Disney princess movie, essentially the bees are like the birds that are hanging out with Snow White. Like Jupiter is basically Cinderella.
A big reach to get there.
I don't think so. I've written my review is like a point for point argument about this, and nobody knows Disney princess movies on this podcast better than I do. So
okay, I'll take your word for it, but I still think it's a bad movie.
I'll forward you the review and you can read it. Yeah, I know. I like If the silly things if it falls, I think the movie can easily sink under the weight of how silly it is. But I don't really understand what people were expecting. I mean, this is the movie that they followed Speed Racer with, and I fucking love Speed Racer, but that is a silly movie, But I mean, that one was more for kids, and I think Jupiter Ascending was like Alita. people like 35-year-old dudes thought that it was for them. It's not. It's for 14, 15-year-old girls. That's what Jupiter Ascending is for. It's for the same audience as like, you know, Vampire Diaries and fucking Riverdale. Like
Yeah.
you know, that's what level the dialogue is basically operating on. It's pretty straightforward. It's pretty simplistic. But thematically, it has a whole bunch of interesting stuff going on, which is why I ended up liking it in spite of its silliness. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that is our list. That is our top 5 favorites, overrated and underrated movies. Let us know what your thoughts. Send in some feedback. Tell Evan why he's wrong. Tell me why I'm right.
Why
You know?
he's wrong about everything. Tell him why we should fire him. We can't. He'll fire us.
Gee. All right. Well, again, like I said, write in for that. Don't forget, write in for the prize. Win that Black Panther DVD. You've heard how much better it is than you thought it was. So you know you want that DVD. Write into us telling us your favorite animated movie and why to Sirrsmovies@gmail.com, or join the Facebook group Sirrsmovies on Facebook and write in there. But yeah, so we hope you enjoyed listening to us. You can find more episodes on Spotify, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, and pretty much any other podcast app. And you can contact us, as I said, Sirrsmovies@gmail.com. Next week, we are going to be doing Captain Marvel. So tune in for our thoughts on that. That should be a fun one, getting back to the Marvel universe. Evan, where can people find your work on the internet?
You can find long-form reviews of mine with spoilers and analysis at thunderclam.wordpress.com. That's thunderclam, as in the sea creature, .wordpress.com. Just put a review up for Serenity finally, and I got some more coming up. You can challenge me to fistfights over Batman-related things at Evan Todd-McCoy on Twitter. And you can find spoiler-free reviews on sirwalka.com. I should have one for Greta coming up next week. Sam, where can we find you?
You can find me on Instagram as at JustBase, and you can find me later on Twitter crying into my beer when Sterling fires me at Sam_Jayne.
Never.
You're gonna get DM'd so much support from white supremacists.
Overrated. How dare you? You should have ran that by me before.
I'm sorry.
No. Okay.
Now, we're signing off here, guys.
Indeed. Yeah. You can follow me at Sirwaka, SIRRWAKA on Twitter, obviously sirwaka.com, and obviously follow the podcast at Sirrsmovies, SIR at Sirrsmovies on Twitter. But thank you guys for joining us, and we will see you next week.